Mr. Prondak is here. I saw you go out. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to call to order our first hearing of the evening, and this is the application of Michael and Jessica Sergi. The application is dated November 15th, 2018, and they're appealing a finding by the building commissioner regarding the parking of an alleged commercial vehicle on their premises in allegedly in violation of the town bylaw. The applicants are also requesting that if they are in violation of the bylaw, they're requesting a variance as the suitable relief to be granted. My name is John Leonard. I'm chairman of the Board of Appeals. With me this evening to my immediate right is board member Kathleen O'Donnell, and to my immediate left is board member Therese Quijano. The rules of the board are first that we'll hear from the applicants. We'll hear from people who have questions of the applicants. We'll hear from people who want to speak in support of the applicant's position, those who want to speak in opposition, if any, to the applicant's position. And then we'll consider the application. We're tape recording the proceedings here as always. It is being taped for television purposes, but the official record of this proceeding is the tape recording. I've summarized the advertisement, and we have the application filed by the applicant, and we have a letter that has been submitted to the Board of Appeals dated January 3rd, 2019, describing the nature of the appeal and some legal research and historical research that Mrs. Sergi has performed, and so we thank the applicant for submitting those materials. In addition to the application and the advertisement, we have a series of email transmissions that have been received over the past week or so. There are perhaps 10 or more of them. I'm not going to take the time to read them all because I'll put everyone to sleep and we'll be here till 11:30. But they all have a common theme, I guess is the way to put it. They're all neighbors of Mr. and Mrs. Sergi. They have received notice that they're requesting a variance to continue to park a van in the driveway. All of them fully support the application for a variance. They have lived in the neighborhood for a wide variety of years. A couple of new neighbors, but some are 18 and 25-year-old residents of this neighborhood. Most of them have children. They're all deeply invested in the Milton community, and they indicate that for as long as they've known Mike and Jessica Sergi, they've always had a van in their driveway. They always maintain their home, yard, and vehicles impeccably. Nobody knows anybody who opposes the application, and they thank the board for the board's consideration. So rather than as I say, that's a fair summary of all of them. The people who have submitted emails, Joe Keene on January 5, 2019, Lisa Fahey on January 6, 2019, Katie Shields on January 4th, 2019, Anna Zukauskas on January 5, 2019. Bob Nomes, N-A-U-M-E-S, or Noms, on January 5, 2019. Mark Redmond on January 6, 2015. Anna Garrido-White on January 5, 2019. Kelly Twitchell on January 8th, 2019. And Catherine Loftus on January 8th, 2019. So we thank all of the neighbors for taking the time to to write to the board. We'll have these emails as part of the evidence in the proceeding. So, Mr. and Mrs. Sergi here. Good. Do you want to come on up and have a seat? And Mr. Prondak, they're the appellants, so why don't you come over here and make yourself comfortable as well?
Thank you.
Good to see you again, Mr. Prondak.
Thank you as well.
Well, Mr. and Mrs. Sergi, welcome to the Board of Appeals.
Thank you.
Good. We're delighted to hear from you. Why don't you tell us the basis of your appeal and why you believe that the board should either find you're not violating the bylaw or whether the board should consider granting you a variance from the terms of the bylaw.
Okay. Most of our arguments are stated in the letter that was sent to
Yeah,
you.
and they're well put forth. The problem is, well, people out there haven't read the letter.
Oh, okay, so I'll summarize the
So just, yeah,
arguments in the letter.
summarize what
Sure.
the position is.
So first, we do not believe
Why
that
don't you
we're...
identify yourself
Oh,
first?
I'm Jessica Sergi,
Michael
462.
Sergi.
Well, and you live at?
462 Adams Street.
Great.
So the first point that we have is we don't believe that we're in violation of the zoning bylaws. The bylaws state that in a residential zone, you cannot have a commercial vehicle, but commercial, unless it is garaged. And two things are undefined in the bylaws. First, commercial is undefined, and second, garaged is undefined. So we spoke with the building commissioner about how we could resolve this issue and how commercial vehicle is defined. And so in our case, commercial vehicle is defined because the vehicle in question has commercial plates, there's lettering on the sides, and it has a roof rack. So we suggested if we take those three away, so there are no commercial plates, no lettering, and no roof rack, then it will not be a commercial vehicle and we're not in violation. But that would not cure the issues here, according to the building commissioner, because it would still be primarily used for commercial purposes. And similarly, the term garaged is not defined. So I asked what if we did a carport or we did something else? Because for us, it would be a substantial hardship to garage the vehicle because our garage was built in 1910 or so, and so really no vehicle can fit in it. But that also would not be acceptable. And so I looked at other surrounding towns that have similar regulations that state that commercial vehicles can't be in a residential zone. And all of those, for the towns that define it, they define it as 10,000 pounds or more, so it's not based on plate or lettering or racks, but instead it's based on weight, on gross vehicle weight.
In this particular vehicle that you're parking in the driveway, what does it weigh?
I think it's less than 6,000.
Okay. And can you tell me what's the make and model of the
Yes,
vehicle?
it's a 2015 Nissan NV.
2,500.
Okay, what does the NV stand for? What does that do? Is it just a,
That's just what it says
is
on
it
it.
like a van, a
the
little
model number.
minivan or something like
It's
that?
a cargo van,
Yeah.
like Amazon drives around your neighborhood.
Oh, I did, I looked
Yeah,
at,
we have
I
pictures,
see the pictures, but I couldn't, maybe because of failing eyesight, I did look at the pictures and they were very helpful. Thank you for that. But I couldn't see any lettering on the van. Where is the lettering?
Oh, it's right on the front, yeah, it's not in this, but right on the front driver and passenger side, there's a square box that says Sergi Contracting.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You have a picture of it there?
I don't know, I just have the pictures that I
How
sent.
big is the square, approximately?
Oh, yeah.
2 feet by 14 inches.
Yeah, it's just on the driver's seat.
It's blocked by the bush.
Okay, that's why I couldn't see it.
Yeah.
Okay. Sergi Contracting, 2 feet by 2 feet.
No, 14 inches, so it's 2 feet by like 1 foot.
Okay, 2 feet by 1 foot, thank you. And you have a general contracting business, or? Good for you.
One person, small business.
That's as small as you can get.
That's it.
But I think you may have 2 people. who-
Correct, my
who-
secretary.
Who deal with the business, yeah. And she's not being paid enough money, I
We could argue that.
But, okay, so, and you do general contracting, or?
Yeah, mostly repair work, handyman stuff.
Okay,
But I have my license, kitchens, bathrooms, you know.
great. And do you have a separate place of business, or do you work out of your home?
I work out of the van, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, great. So why don't you continue, Mrs. Switch?
So I think that sums up why we don't think we're in violation. I also put in the towns that I found that had the 10,000 pound definition, which were Braintree, Quincy, and Hingham. So then the second argument, I suppose, is that assuming there is a violation, a variance is appropriate here. So the standard for having a variance allowed is that the land and structures, let me just look at the law. Owing to circumstances relating to the land or structures affecting such, that it would be a hardship, financial or otherwise, for us to become into compliance with the bylaw. And so here, it would be a substantial hardship for our family to basically knock down the current garage and rebuild a garage that would fit the van, which probably would also require us to come here for another variance. Because
Love the business.
Yeah,
We would
so,
like to see you. Don't worry
so
about that.
That would be our substantial hardship here. And, you know, as you stated, our neighbors, the other part of the statute is that the variance can't nullify or substantially derogate from the intent and purpose of the bylaw, and that it would not be a substantial detriment to the public good. And here, as you said, anybody who we know that has voiced their opinion is in support of this variance. So those are our basic arguments.
Okay, let me ask you this. On the garage that you have, I did take a look at that via some satellite. And do you park any cars in the garage?
No.
And is that because it's too small for
Yes.
modern vehicles?
Yes.
And it was built, did you say, in,
I think it's 1950,
okay.
20.
And if you had to build a garage that was of sufficient size to house two vehicles that most people do have, do you have any guesstimate as to what the cost of that would be?
That's his department.
How much money do you have?
Don't ask me that. You ask my wife. She's got all
Ask
my
him,
money.
he would know. How much money do you have? You know, there's minimums and there's no maximum.
Sure.
But there's gotta be, I can't, if I gotta go for a variance and everything else, who knows? That time and money. And if you're gonna do two, why wouldn't you go for four?
It depends on how much room you have in your backyard and how much you've
Exactly.
got to spend.
And we have,
But would you agree with me, it would cost you
Substantial.
tens and tens of thousands of dollars
Yes,
to do
correct.
that? And with respect to your remedy, that you would, the signs, are they painted on the vehicle?
no, stickers.
The stickers, so they can peel right off? Or you could get some type of magnetic sticker and just put it on and take it
Well,
off?
it's not code for the state. It's gotta be stuck on there.
Oh, it does have to be
So
stuck on.
if he was parked in a commercial spot in Boston, for example, you can't have the magnetic.
Because people will be able to take it off your car and put it on their cars.
Yeah,
Put it
but,
on 5 cars.
Yeah.
Okay.
so you'd get a ticket for being in violation of the commercial rules.
So your position is that you're willing to remove the sticker? You're willing to get passenger plates and not have commercial plates, or just cover the plates
The
over?
problem with that is it gets into an insurance area. So like, you kind of want to do things legitimately, and legitimately, if it's a commercial vehicle, it should have a commercial policy with commercial plates. Now, there's probably some loopholes you could get around that, but is that worth it? If I get in an accident, I'm not covered because the town didn't want a sticker on my truck? Doesn't make sense.
So you're proposing that you would...
Keep it
you
the
would
same.
Cover it over, or just leave it
No,
as...
well,
Given the pictures, where you can't see it, and from the front of the house, you can't even find the vehicle on my property. It's pretty non-offensive, in our opinion, and all of our neighbors' opinions that have to look at it.
Tell me about the roof rack. Why would you take the roof rack off? Is it
well,
some...
we were just trying to see if there was a way that we could not be brought to court, basically. At that point, we had the probable cause hearing, and so we asked, okay, so how can we resolve this? And asked those questions.
Okay, then
So,
that-
but right now, we're looking to keep it as is and keep it parked where it is.
Yeah, I can't find the pictures. Do you have a picture of the
yeah.
roof rack? Is it just a normal roof rack that one finds on typical Nissan vehicles?
I mean, it's not like overly huge or in your face, if that's what you mean.
Okay. So it's a small metal roof rack? And did you install that yourself on the vehicle?
I had it installed.
Okay. Yeah, that's
It's a
the dealership
custom,
or somewhere
it's a
else?
custom aluminum rack, a higher end rack.
That's great, you can handle those back. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
The only other thing I'd add is, we have one direct abutter, and she's here in support. She did not write an email, but she is here in support. And one other neighbor is also here as well, who did not write an email.
Okay, good, we'll certainly hear from them. Ms. O'Donnell, do you have any questions of the applicants?
No, I do not. I do not.
People are trying to pick up speed. I think we've answered all the questions I have.
You asked for
Mr. Prundeck, do you want to be heard on this application?
Just very briefly, in that, Ms. Sergi mentioned at the beginning that there were three things that she had offered to remove: the roof racks, the signage, and the plates. I do not recall, and if I missed that, I apologize, I do not recall the issue of removing the plates or going back to a passenger plate. If the van was turned into simply a passenger vehicle, then there is no issue with the office, with our office. That being said, there are a lot of things in our zoning bylaw that aren't defined, and I'm challenged with the task of sorting those out and trying to enforce that rule fairly and uniformly across the town. And for a long time, we struggled with, because of basically the housing boom, an inability to proactively seek out violations like this. We were recently, a year ago, we were given a position of a code enforcement officer who is dedicated to doing that for the entire town. That was passed by town meeting. And it was Mr. Birchhammer, who is here tonight, who actually did the investigation and the citing of this commercial vehicle. So we do believe that it qualifies as a commercial vehicle, and it was cited as such, and I believe that that part of the appeal should be upheld.
Does it still qualify or constitute a commercial vehicle if Mr. and Mrs. Sergi remove the signs and maybe the roof rack, if they left the roof rack there, and they covered over the commercial plates with a little booty or something like that?
Well, I think that approach makes it difficult for me to enforce it uniformly, because then I have to take that into account on every violation that I have to enforce. And would I love it if there was a better definition in the zoning bylaw? Absolutely. But I don't have that. And then it becomes, a matter of enforcement. And, do we have to monitor that? And what if we see it one night, when we're out doing the neighborhood, and then that, that plate is not covered, and then we're citing them for not covering the plate because it's a violation.
Because the whole purpose of the statute, or the bylaw, I guess, when it's talking about you can put it in a garage.
Right.
Leave it as it is, put it in a garage. Nobody can see it, so therefore it doesn't create this offensive consideration for neighbors and abutters. And is there a difference in your mind? I don't want to give you a hard time, Mr. Brenda, between whether they put it in a garage or whether they put a tarpaulin over it? And
Yeah, I believe the intention of the law is inside a garage,
okay.
some type of garage structure. And again, that comes down to uniformity and the range of requests, of creative requests that I've received over the years is enormous, considering the issue.
Sure.
Again, it's difficult for me to...
Okay, well, I took a look at some statistics, and one of the statistics that I believe in, it sounds accurate, that Milton has about 60,000 residents as of 2018. That's what it said. It said 59,180 residents. Do you know, And so it's predominantly residential community. That's one of our never-ending problems, I guess. But it's also one of the never-ending blessings. What percentage of the vehicles registered in Milton, do you know, have commercial plates?
I have no idea.
I mean, is this something you run into all the time? Or is this-
Of the primary complaints that we deal with, commercial vehicles, unregistered vehicles, junk and debris, those are the three primary zoning complaints, the three biggest zoning complaints that we deal with across the town. As far as the numbers, the residential numbers, the number that I'm most aware of is we're 97% residential and 3% commercial.
I think that's probably very accurate. Of the complaints that you do have, and this is an unfair question, but I'm going to ask it anyway, of commercial plates being used in residential areas, do most of those complaints result from people attaching commercial plates to distinctly commercial vehicles, like a pickup truck or a larger piece of equipment, as opposed to a 4,000 gross weight van that would ordinarily be like a personal van, but for the fact that it had a commercial plate on it?
Most of the vehicles that we encounter are larger, obviously commercial vehicles with racks, with signage. So, yes, but we will occasionally see larger trucks with
Right next to it?
personal plates on them.
Okay.
But you can't do anything about that if the truck's lettered?
No, we would still cite them as a commercial vehicle.
But if it's
Even
not
though-
lettered, you wouldn't?
It depends, it would depend on the size and, the fact that it's got racks, utility boxes, utility bodies. There's a number of things that we take into consideration.
Okay. Do you have anything else you'd like to add?
I think that'll do it.
I have just one question of Mrs. Sergi, because I think you are an attorney in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
I
And I
am.
guess my question to you is, if the board sought to give you the variance that you're asking for, do you think the board would be engaging in spot zoning?
No,
And why not?
because you're not zoning, well, I don't believe you would be. And I cannot remember this, though we looked at for the other hearings I was here for, I did look at this issue, and I can't remember
I don't mean to put you on the
precise, no, I don't remember the precise,
spot.
this isn't my,
I'd say what...
I'll do the lawyer dance if this isn't what I do, but, but I
Well, it may
don't
not
think
be
it will.
what you do, right?
Because you're not zoning our whole residence as commercial. We're just asking for a variance to allow our commercial vehicle, even though I argue it's not commercial,
Right.
to remain on the property.
Yeah. And I guess one of the questions is, there's such a variety of types of vehicles, and
Right.
some have lettering, some don't have lettering, and...
Well, and some are, I mean, it does seem like there are a lot of, and I mentioned this in the letter, there are a lot of commercial vehicles with commercial plates that aren't used for contracting. And it seems that, the standard that's being applied on a case-by-case basis focuses on contractors.
What about people who have a vehicle with, I'll call them regular plates, I don't know what else they're called, passenger car
Yep.
plates, but who use the vehicle to go to Milton Marketplace to do shopping for the family and all of that, and then they drive it into Boston to practice law or to
Right.
engage in business.
Yeah,
Same
well,
thing.
yeah.
it's
That
so
was, everybody's
But
vehicle
somebody
is
doesn't like the
commercial.
look of it.
The only difference is that it doesn't have, it's used for business, it's used for commerce, but it just doesn't have the commercial plate on it.
Right. And-
Whereas somebody who's in the contracting business
Doing things legitimately.
needs that type of plate.
Right.
I mean, I don't, well, you're a lawyer, I think you practice in Boston. You used to,
I
at
used
least.
to, I don't
Well,
anymore, but yes.
That's a good thing, I think. But do you know any lawyers who go out and get commercial plates for their vehicles because they go to court and drive clients around and...
Actually, I
cases?
did.
You did?
Yeah, yeah. My accountant strongly advised against it. Yes.
But I did know somebody who did, did mortgage closings, so they were driving to people's houses to do the closings and all that sort of stuff, and got commercial plates, because I think he thought he could get a deal on, on the car insurance.
Right.
Or something ridiculous like that, but yeah,
Could write off the car.
yeah,
You can write off the car, but
yeah.
That's interesting.
But I think that's the only time I've ever seen that.
Okay. Let me, do you have any questions of Mr. Prondak?
Well, I'm just
Kathleen?
troubled by the idea of a variance for this, because what we're looking at is trying to allow this particular vehicle with this particular person to park on their property. A variance is something that goes on,
It runs with the land,
runs
doesn't
with
it?
the land, and I'm not so sure that's an appropriate relief.
Let me ask you this: if we gave the variance here, you give it on this specific facts, and the Surgeys move to Swalsley or someplace, does somebody can a contractor
Well, that's
then
what
use the variance?
that's what I'm
or-
concerned about, is that I would want to, if I had to give a variance, I would want to say that it was only for this particular vehicle and limited as to time. That's more a special permit than a variance.
It is. Yes.
And so it seems to me that a special permit would be the way to go, not a variance, that you would do an allowance for this particular contractor, this particular van, and for a limited period of time. And if you keep your business and you stay in the house for 5 years, you come back in and you renew it. I'm not so wild about the idea of allowing a commercial vehicle to always be parked on this property.
If I just might add, there was one other case where it was presented by Mr. Cochran, and he was granted a variance,
Yeah.
and it was
Absolute
tied
contract.
to the tied to the owner of the property. Should the owner of the property
Yeah.
sell, then the variance was extinguished in some
Yeah.
manner.
Yeah, and I mean, I did put in
I
the
saw that,
request.
yes.
Yeah,
that
that it
it
would.
be to your vehicle or to a similar vehicle.
under 10,000
Under
pounds.
10,000
I think that
pounds,
makes
yeah.
more sense. What if I got in an accident, totaled it next week? Can't be that.
Yeah, yeah,
Then
but I
you'd
mean,
have to come
but.
in and
Of a
see it.
similar
Yeah.
type.
Right, but something, so as I said, I'm just not really wild about the idea of saying that there can always be a commercial van parked right across from St. Agatha's. I mean, I'm just not really wild about that.
Reese, do you have any questions?
No, I just had pointed, with having a similar consideration where if it's tied to a similar van and we can maybe
that owner,
construct
yeah.
it for this owner, a van that doesn't go over, that stays within these parameters and is specific to this ownership.
Is there any other difference between a special permit and a variance? Bless you. Like that would,
Special permits are usually to allow a particular use, and a variance is something that is varying the zoning for that particular.
Let me ask you this, because you're an attorney, but you also live in this area. To what extent should the board consider the location and the surrounding uses surround your property
I mean, that's,
on this issue of whether the commercial plates constitute some type of horrific desecration of the residential piece in Milton?
well, I mean, that was obviously an issue that caused us some angst, where,
'Cause I remember signs being, when I see you, I see signs in my head.
signs.
Signs.
Yeah, so the two other times that my name, hopefully, the only two other times my name has come up here is one with the Red House across the street on Adams Street.
Oh, the doctor.
Since demolished and then
That
now.
since
a,
demolished is now two commercial units and 2 apartments above, which we were opposed to. And then the Heart Dental sign is probably what you have in mind. So we sent an email opposing that as well, which was also allowed. So, I think that the character of our surrounding neighbors, taking that into consideration, it's not as if it's all residential around us. There are people who have gotten variances for commercial uses around
Including
us.
commercial on the other side of St. Agatha's also.
Yeah. So,
It's all commercial.
So that's something you want us to consider as well?
yes.
Okay. Let me see if there's anybody here who wishes to, who hasn't submitted a petition, but who wishes to speak in support of Mr. and Mrs. Sergi's application for variance, or finding that there is no violation of the bylaw. Does anyone want to speak? Yes, sir. Come on up here. Unfortunately, we're being, no, you can sit
Oh, you can-
Mr. Prondak will slide over, and we'll just sit right here. Thank you, Joe. Why don't you tell us your name and address, please?
Sure. My name's Marty Shields. I live at 26 St. Agatha Road.
Good, welcome to the Board of Appeals.
Thank you.
What do you got to say, Marty?
I've been living on that road for about, 10 or 11 years now. The Sergis moved in maybe 7, 8, I'm not sure, years ago. What they did to the area when they moved in has been, a great turnaround for the corner of the street. They took the convent that was there, he refurbished it, made it look really beautiful. It's really nicely landscaped. The whole place is really nice. I don't have any problem with them parking the van there. The van is always well kept. It's actually hidden by the bushes and the trees, really, actually. They'll continue to grow and fully hide that part of the driveway. I wouldn't want to have this, I agree with you. I think it would be a good thing to have a special permit where it would, expire at some point or not be carried over should they want to move out. I think that's a good point. And yeah, they're great people. I would just, support them in anything they do. They're always there to help us with anything that we have going on. It's good to have a handyman around, so I wouldn't want them to consider this as, the last straw. We're moving out of Milton, can't stand it anymore, that kind of thing. We want to have them around. They're really
call
good
me.
people. That's it.
Thank you.
All right,
Appreciate
thank
it. Is there anybody else who wants to be heard on this application? Yes, ma'am. Come on up here, please, and have a seat. Tell us your name and address, and we're delighted to hear from you.
Yes, Kathleen Lynch, and I'm 15 St. Agatha Road. I'm next door neighbor to them, and I have absolutely no objection to the van in the yard. I can't even see it from my house. The garage is between my house, and I have absolutely no objection.
Okay,
them
does
parking it
something
there.
else block out this vehicle when it's in there?
Excuse me?
Is there bushes or trees?
She's our only
shrubbery, and-
a butter in the back, so she can't see the
I
car.
can't see it at all.
It's the garage she
Yeah,
sees.
the garage and everything, and
And
they
in the-
have bushes in the side of their house, and you can't see it in the yard,
Great.
okay?
Thank you very much. Appreciate you coming.
welcome.
Anybody else who wants to
And
be?
Mrs. Lynch is a lifelong resident of Milton, I should add.
Well, I'd like to say congratulations. I don't know, why is this the first time we've seen you?
I've been up here before.
Oh, you should come to our meetings. Well, you're welcome here anytime. Is there anybody else who'd like to be heard? Okay, is there anybody who wants to be heard in support of Mr. Prondak's position here? And there's no such person present, so unless my colleagues have any questions or comments, then do you have anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Sergi? Okay, we're going to end this.
I'd just like to add one thing.
Sure.
As both neighbors mentioned, there are arborvitaes planted next to it that were last year 2 feet tall, now they're 7 feet. You're not going to be able to even see the van soon. And you saw the picture from the front, from St. Agatha's. It's like a Where's Waldo, you can't even see it. You couldn't tell me if that was a van, or a Nissan Armada, or a Nissan pickup truck. It's beautiful, so it's not like offensive to people, You can't see the signs. So it's just gonna get better when the trees grow.
Sure. Thank you. So we'll call to an end the hearing, and we're obligated to discuss the hearing in open session.
Thank you.
And do it here and now. So let me ask Ms. O'Donnell, do you want to be heard first?
Sure. I mean, I agree that it's a violation of our zoning bylaw. I agree with Mr. Prondak's reading, and I think the term of garaging is something that people could figure out pretty clearly without having a definition of garage in the zoning bylaw. But I do appreciate the fact that there are lots of people driving all kinds of things for their jobs and being commercial vehicles. So I'm inclined to support a variance for this to take care of the zoning violation. But the requirement that there would be maintain the screening with the bushes, that it would terminate on the sale or the termination of the business. Those kinds of conditions, I think, I would want to put in there.
Okay. Ms. Keano?
Yes, I agree. I would add in the under 10,000 pounds, keep it a similar vehicle to what it is now, so that it doesn't get replaced by something, huge. I agree that I think that it was appropriately cited, however, a variance would be appropriate. The only other thing I would add is that the towns for which you used to support, those towns seem to have more of allowance for commercial vehicles in general. And really, the only thing that I would take from that is the fact that in each of those towns, they define their commercial vehicles as being in excess of 10,000 pounds, where here it's clearly under that. And I think as long as you continue to maintain a vehicle in that size structure, then a variance would be appropriate.
I have some questions about all of this, because I think this. I took a look at some of the regulations, and there's a regulation from the MassDOT, and it talks about commercial vehicles and what the regulations are. And they say a commercial vehicle has to have a gross weight of in excess of 10,000 pounds, okay? And then it says it has to be designed for the transport of more than 8 passengers, or designed to transport more than 15 passengers, and is transporting equipment and instruments as part of a commercial venture, okay? As I understand this, I don't think this rationale meets any of those requirements. And the other problem that I have is there's a case that I found intriguing, and it came down on October 30th, 2018. It's a land court decision. It's Chaput versus Kane. And in this, a gentleman had a commercial vehicle, and he was parking it out in the street in front of his house, and the neighbors objected to that. Do you remember this one?
Yeah.
And then at the night, he'd pull it in, and he had several other vehicles there, and they would move equipment and materials and all that in and out of his house, which he was using as a warehouse. Apparently, that was lawful in the town of Great Town of Hull. And so the question came to the land court, and I think it's Judge Long who wrote the opinion, and I agree with everyone. Our bylaw here is deficient in definition and in content. It really is it's a mystery. But when I read Judge Long's opinion, he talks about the maxims for interpreting bylaws, and they're all true. That you've got to use the language is plain, unambiguous. You've got to construe all elements of it. But he says in the nutshell that all of this stuff dealing with commercial vehicles in residential zones is inherently contextual. That's what he says. So and when I looked up the number of residents in Milton, I found there were 60,000 of them. I don't know how many of them have commercial plates. I don't know how many of the parking in the residential zones. We're the Board of Appeals here, but I don't want to be the Board of Licensure and have 150 of these applications, because they're all different. And they're all, you may get somebody who's obviously parking a construction vehicle, a pickup truck or something, or a dump truck. I don't care what kind of plates it has on it, that's a commercial vehicle. And yet here we have a vehicle which is really a personal vehicle, but since it's used in the business, Mr. Sergi, to be conservative and maybe to comply with the law, I think, has commercial plates on it to protect himself and his family, so he can have it insured. But that vehicle isn't as offensive as a truly commercial vehicle, and particularly a vehicle above 10,000 pounds gross weight. And I looked at several of the bylaws of surrounding towns, and that's what they talk about. Milton doesn't even talk about that. So it just seems to me that the question is this a violation of the bylaw because it has a commercial plate on it? Because we have to assume that the Surgeys, taken to their word, are willing to remove the signage from the vehicle. They're willing to remove the rails on the top of the vehicle.
If we have to, yes,
Well,
but
if
we'll be
you-
in violation of the state then.
If you,
But then, yeah, then he's got problems complying with state law and regulations.
because the state regulations say you have
You
to
need,
have the.
you need
Yeah.
signage, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, but we were talking about having signage that could be removed.
That's
He
not
just said
adequate.
he can't do it, yeah.
Still get tickets and so forth.
Okay, because I remember we have had several hearings on cases like this, and, one person wanted to extend the carport over, and I don't know whether they did that or not, and somebody else, the vehicle couldn't be viewed from the street, couldn't be viewed from the public way, and the question was, is this a real violation of the bylaw? So,
Well, that was the guy with the van in the front yard,
well, yes, that's right, but that's pretty obvious, so I
the caravan that he was
I
like
think
not sleeping
here,
in.
the question is, nobody disputes that we can give them a variance. It's a question of, we're going to have 100 variance applications on commercial plates all over Milton, and we're going to have this type of hearing when it's able to be resolved.
So
without a
are you
variance.
proposing that we then sort of have like a definition that we would insert into the bylaw of what a commercial vehicle would be?
Well, we know what the purpose of the bylaw is.
Yeah.
The purpose of the bylaw is aimed at maintaining, and this is Judge Long,
Yeah,
and it
right.
seems to apply to our case, to maintaining a uniform residential appearance throughout the neighborhood, to preserve property values, and to eliminate noise and disruption from commercial operations. And he says that all of these questions are a matter of degree. And the great body of law in this area consists of drawing lines. And where the line is being drawn is whether it's rational and whether it's appropriate. And it's the body of the Board of Appeals to make that type of judgment in these instances.
So then your preference would be to say that we wouldn't find a violation in this instance, and the enforcement action would go, and we wouldn't be forced to sort of give a variance for something that we're really not.
Well, because I think
Yeah.
it's very difficult. I know, I understand what Joe was saying,
Yeah.
but I understand what the Surgeys are saying. They are in a residential zone, but nobody would believe it if you opened your eyes and you looked at the activity that's taking place in the area. We've extended all kinds of relief to businesses who wanted signage and relief to operate commercial, at least partially commercial structures in the residential zone.
Yeah, no, I'm not
So
opposed,
that's-
I'm not
that's where-
opposed to that approach, because I think that that makes me, that sort of better approach than I'm not really comfortable about giving a variance.
And the, but
You know,
the
because of the issue
question,
that variances run with the land. So so then it would make more sense to say, okay, fine, why don't we then sort of take the interpretation from the land court and argue that this is not a violation of the zoning, and then just.
well, I think the problem that I have is we've got to be honest about it as
Yeah.
well. And when I looked at the photographs, I didn't see the signage, okay? I couldn't see it, it was blocked. So it seemed to me that, well, if the signage isn't there, and the rack didn't look unusually offensive, the car looks like it's a personal vehicle, the only thing was the plates, and what if the plates were either covered over and then removed when you're driving to work or something, like you put a little booty or bonnet on it, or you park the car in the backyard. This is an extensive backyard, it's all shrub, nobody could even see the car. Is that a real violation of the bylaw that we should be jumping over hoops to try to cure, as opposed to somebody who's parked a a cement truck in
Yeah,
their
right,
driveway.
yeah.
Something that's absolutely foolish.
Well, I guess my question is, how are we defining this as commercial? Is it really only the commercial plates? Because as far as I can tell, the weight of the vehicle does not meet the characteristics of commercial. The racks certainly don't seem to be. And the signage is small enough, 1 by 2 or 2 feet by 1, whereas that, I think that could be, arguably, other people who don't have commercial vehicles can have signage on their car as large as that.
Well, see, I wonder, if I go out to my car, which is blue, and it has passenger plates on it, and I put Leonard the lawyer, I write that on, I have my phone number under there, I mean, am I violating the bylaw under those circumstances? I think I would be.
Under those, yes, I agree.
Like if you had a real estate company and you had a Suburban with a ski rack on it, what's the difference between that and my van?
What about people who put signage on their vehicles for advertisement purposes but aren't using it commercially? I mean, that happens routinely also. So
What are they advertising?
they get paid just to advertise different companies, but
Yeah.
it's not necessarily their own or any business that they own.
But if they're getting paid for it, or if there's some consideration, that would be
You
commercial.
would consider that to be,
Yeah,
even
I
if
think
it's a
they would.
passenger vehicle? Okay.
They would, but if
Beetleborgs.
that vehicle
Okay.
was in the driveway and it didn't have signage on it, and the only impediment under the bylaw was it had commercial plates on it. Number one, I don't think I'd be overly concerned about that, that people are going to spy commercial plates. Neighborhood is going to heck. And particularly if they covered over the plates at night or whenever during the day. See, there's no doubt.
Who can see them anyway?
Under
not
this
gonna
case,
happen.
you can park the car right out in front of your house, I
Yeah.
assume. There may
All
not be
day.
parking because of that particular street. But if you assume it was a normal street, you could park your car out there with signage, and that's lawful according to Judge Long. You just couldn't leave it there overnight. You'd have to park it somewhere else overnight. So I just wonder whether this is a tempest in a teapot, or whether it's something that...
Well, I mean,
we
I
should
think,
just-
having lived next door for one time with a guy who was running a business out of his house with trucks that came every morning and picked up the guys, and they all stood outside and they smoked and they dropped coffee cups all over your yard and that kind of thing. We have other provisions in the zoning code to handle that particular problem, not this one. So that, you could.
But we also have this family they've designed a
Yeah.
really nice landscape to cover this vehicle purposefully, whereas in other instances,
Yeah, that doesn't
they may
happen.
not take that's not going to happen.
Right.
I mean, where do we see that happen?
Right.
So
So,
what's the definition of a garage under the bylaw? What if they...
There is not one.
We don't have one.
In a car, but
Is a carport a garage?
I do not believe so. To me, a garage is an enclosed structure.
So something that tented over the vehicle would not be adequate under your interpretation of the
Signs are
bylaw?
open, no.
What if-
But there are people who have purchased these portable garages.
Yeah,
so to speak.
right, those
They're
metal
like
ones,
tents.
yeah.
Hoop houses, you could call them, maybe.
What did you call them?
Hoop houses.
Hoop
Yeah.
houses, okay.
Yeah, they're just a metal frame with
A
a...
metal frame
Yeah.
with a fabric covering.
that seems to me to be way more offensive than what we're dealing with
Ridiculous.
right now. So that would
Absolutely
be.
ridiculous. That's adequate.
So what about if, I mean, I understand the definition of, with the, but what about if, I know that he has to keep the sign on, because it can't come off when he goes into, parking into Boston and stuff as that. What if he was to get, though, one of those magnets, but one that can just go over the signage arguably, during the evening hours, just for your property, not for when he's out, and cover the plates?
basically get a gray.
Get a
blank
gray,
one, so you can
blank,
see.
right, and something that, one of the magnetic ones that is removable. I mean, would that be,
I think it's a great idea. You're not going to be, you can't see it when it's parked there.
I know.
It's just, you're trying to cover a problem that's not there. It's a non-existing problem.
right, but we're trying to also stop there for being a slippery slope, so,
That would be to any neighbor going by there.
right.
My immediate abutters have all written that they're cool with it.
Right.
Right, but we're
We're
dealing
not thinking
with
of you in
larger issues.
particular,
not.
we're thinking about what's going to, the precedent that we're setting here by saying that, oh, that's not a violation, and then saying, okay, in this particular instance, it isn't.
Does that
but
help remedy the
tomorrow it's
situation,
not.
Joe,
Right.
if they
So if we had commercial
put
plates.
a plain plaque or something on the side of the vehicle while it's parked in the residential zone? It's magnetic. They hook it on there, and then they cover over the commercial plate, and they put it in the backyard where nobody can see it. I mean, is that...
Yeah, but again, it's like your fear that you're gonna have a ton of applicants, I'm now gonna have a ton of people saying, well, I'm gonna cover over my sign.
But I'm going to keep a cement
But it
truck, but it's
depends.
less than 10,000
Right, if it's,
pounds.
but you have to deal with the specific facts. If it was a dump truck, we wouldn't care what it would be. That's a commercial vehicle, and you can't park it there. It's got to be garaged.
The only thing that seems to be making this vehicle commercial is the sign and the plates, if I understand correctly. Because the size and the racks are something that we see on residential. The
No,
size
it's
of
the
it.
size, he said also, because I have a pickup truck, no problem.
But everyone has pickup, a lot of people have pickup trucks.
Correct, it's the same
And
size.
that's my concern. There's a balance that has to be struck, and it has to be a rational balance. You're the interpreter of the bylaw in the first instance. We call the shots if we have to. Of course, you can appeal from our decisions as well if you think they're crazy. But this seems to me like something that is if it is a violation of the bylaw, it's so minimal that there has to be some type of rational solution that doesn't require the Surgeys to spend $100,000 on a garage, or that doesn't force the board to be granting variances, because there's nobody who opposes this application. And then we're in an instance with 10 people coming in here who have been cited by you and your trustee staff, saying, well, you gave the Surgeys a variance, so what about me? And then we say, well, the Surgeys couldn't build a garage. Can you build a garage? You're going through all these crazy distinctions, and we could be here for months. It doesn't seem like it's making common sense.
But at the same time, there was one other variance that was granted for that, and that hasn't caused that rush.
Yeah, and I don't remember that, unfortunately.
It was standard share of 75.
Yeah.
Maybe you may not have sat on that.
I may not have. Maybe I was outraged at that variance. I don't know. But do you have a sense here that if they did cover over those plates and cover over the signage, that this is something that wouldn't attract your attention, or do you want to?
If there was some kind of formal
Decision on our part?
Yeah.
opinion from the board. that-
Yeah.
It would be a decision based on a stipulation from the applicants.
Right.
That they would, any type of vehicle that's commercial would have to be, either have no signage on it, or the signage would have to be blocked with a magnetic thing, so it wouldn't destroy the edge.
You talking about me or after me?
You.
While you own it. After you, nobody cares.
The problem with that is, I'm being realistic with you. When I pull in, my 3 daughters come out yelling and screaming to give me a hug and a kiss. There's going to be some night that I don't put the sticker on.
Nobody's going to play gotcha.
You want to bet?
Yeah, no, I do bet.
people have
because-
better
Can you
things.
put that in writing?
No, I can't put anything in writing.
It's all who complains, that's all.
Yeah, but nobody's complained here, apparently, except they saw commercial plates. And
Not for me, but somebody did.
their philosophy is, if you see commercial plates there, that's not proper. It just depends upon the nuances of the facts, as Judge Long says. And to me, granting a variance on these facts, I don't want to do that unless I'm forced to do it. I think it's bad policy. And to me, everyone here should go to mediation, and there should be some type of sensible arrangement made. And to me, that makes sense, that if you agree to cover over those signs and to cover the plates at night, then we would write a decision which would say, as long as you fulfill those conditions, there's no violation of the bylaw under those circumstances, and there's no need for a special permit or a variance, and nobody's going to play gotcha. Just that doesn't happen. Mr. Prondak doesn't play gotcha, and he won't play it with you. And no neighbor is going to say, well, now we're going to get to Mike and Jessica because they forgot to fix their sign, because if they came in here complaining, we would pay no attention to them. So isn't that the type of protection that wouldn't that help you here?
I don't believe so, because there's going to be too many
I think
times.
you should talk to your lawyer, to be frank about it, before you make up your opinion on
Well,
this.
I'm trying to be realistic with you. If it's pouring cats and dogs, you think I'm going to, like, cover up both plates and cover the signage when I'm in a driveway where you, I'm 100 feet off of Adams Street, by the way.
What if we put in that you would maintain substantial compliance?
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if it would help.
And
Maintain the
that
trees and
allows-
you can't
that-
see it.
That allows him not to
Substantial
cite you.
compliance and period.
And then you, right, and that allows you to not cite him during pouring rain or when his daughters want to come out, and it also allows you the comfort of knowing that you don't have to do it all, you can get out of those citations.
And one other question is, so this vehicle, you would say, so what if, again, there was an accident tomorrow and he got a different vehicle? Is it this, would the same standard apply to the next vehicle? As long as it was
Of course it
under
would,
10,000?
unless the vehicle is a 12,000-pound tank that you're
Yeah.
parking in your
Yeah.
driveway. You know the rules better than we do, so.
This wouldn't even be specific to your vehicle, it would just be dealing with the two items that I see that are making it distinguished as commercial right now, and that is that little sign and the commercial plates. So if we deal with those two issues, and it's not then a citation,
Is there a problem with having your plates covered in your driveway?
no,
No.
it's not a public
I
way.
would.
It
might be
I would
from
even-
the state.
I would even agree that
You
just
wouldn't,
just covering the signage would be adequate.
Okay, and not the plates, just leave
Yeah.
it, because nobody's going to see the plates unless you're
Anyway, yeah,
standing
in
in
the
front of
dark,
the
yeah,
vehicle.
right,
Nobody can
yeah.
see them anyway. So that
And we'll put in
that makes-
substantial compliance.
When you say coverage, that means view visible from where?
We want the signs covered
You can cover them,
Magnetic stickers.
with the magnetic,
One in each
you
pocket of
just
the door.
put something on it, to cover the sign.
If you couldn't see the vehicle?
We don't care whether you can see the vehicle, we want the sign covered.
Because of the precedence it's setting, this will allow us to treat this differently, because this is going to basically decommercialize your truck. With I think these magnets
It's
cost
simple.
like
Yeah.
very little money.
Mrs. Sergi, do you have anything to say?
I mean,
Doesn't it make sense?
well, I understand what you're trying to do, and I understand the struggle with precedent, but from our perspective, we just want to continue doing what we're doing, because we don't believe it's a violation, and even if you can see the commercial signage, it's not, it's not a true commercial vehicle, as you've talked about, like a dump truck or a cement truck. And so from our perspective, we're not in violation, so why should we have to modify it?
We're
you're doing-
offering a pretty simple compromise.
Right.
Very simple compromise of a situation. You've already pointed out that our zoning bylaw doesn't have the language that you'd like to have it, that we define commercial. Mr. Prodnex, you're putting him in a really bad position about the fact that he's trying to do an enforcement action on what he's following in the zoning bylaw. You can't read into our zoning bylaw that commercial vehicles mean it weighs more than 10,000 pounds and that it's this and that, because we don't have that in there. So you're putting him in a position, we're trying to work this out to say, look, we can take care of the enforcement of the zoning bylaw, which is written the way it's written, and a reasonable compromise which just says, at night, when it's parked there, you just cover it up. The sign with a simple thing. It's like 2 magnets. No big deal.
So, I think Mike's point is that, and I understand all that, but I think his point is that you can't see the signage anyway from wherever anyone is.
But that's not what the
talking
bylaw
about the
says. The
future,
bylaw
that's all.
doesn't
Doesn't
say
matter
you
what
can't
we're
see
doing.
it. It says we can't have a commercial vehicle unless it's garaged.
Right.
That's what it says. The bylaw doesn't say unless it's
So this is how you're
seen.
considering kind of garaging it.
Correct.
to block.
Well,
We're just-
it doesn't, I'm
Hiding
saying
the
that.
commercial, the reason it's in a garage is so that you won't see the sign.
Right.
That's the reason why the thing is worded that way. So the idea is cover the sign, then you get rid of the need to have the garage.
Yeah.
But if you look at it, if you don't want to do it, I respectfully think you're tilting at windmills, but we'll just make a decision denying your variance application. Nobody's entitled to a variance. They're highly discretionary, and we'll affirm Mr. Prondak's finding, and you can appeal that to the district court or the Superior Court, and I think at some point you're going to get before a judge who has more work in front of him or her than she wants, and he or she is going to say, is this the real world, folks? I've got people I'm putting in jail for 20 years, and I have all of these issues, and we're going to, this is like something you'd debate in a real estate class. But if you want to do that, so the offer is that Mr. Prondak, I think he's being very generous, saying that as long as you cover the signage on a regular basis and you're in substantial compliance with that, then he's not going to push this. If you don't want that, then you're entitled to your legal remedies, and so be it. Unfortunately, we've got 2 other hearings here, and I think the board is trying to take into account the specific facts that you're presenting to us, and we're trying to urge Mr. Prondak to not to just find because the vehicle has commercial plates, that's the end of it, and I think he's been more than kind and generous under the circumstances. So, do you want to talk with your husband for a second? And probably you can talk in private, or we'll let you recess for 2 seconds or 2 minutes or something like
There's
that.
nothing more to say.
Oh, okay. So, yes, we'll do that.
You want to do that?
Yes.
Okay, so what we'll do is we'll put together a decision by agreement of the parties, and get it signed, and I think your problems are...
Can I ask something?
Yes, of course you can.
If this was the result of a citation, couldn't this be an agreement that's done between Mr. Pronak and the parties and then not be in our purview anymore?
Well, I'm
It's
not
just a
comfortable,
notice.
I'm not comfortable with
Okay,
that.
okay.
Mr. Prondak wouldn't be either. No, this needs...
No, because it's an enforcement
Because
that's
they
come
came
to
in,
here.
okay.
Right.
Yeah, and fortunately, the mediation services worked, and hopefully this will end all your problems. I personally think you've made the right decision. I think this is it's a unique situation, and we're dealing with it uniquely, and I think you're going to be protected, and the town is protected, and the neighbors are happy. Mr. Prondak, who has 2 more hearings before us here, well, we may keep you for the 3rd, is happy, so.
Could I see a draft before you guys sign it, just to make sure I understand everything?
We don't,
You don't usually do that.
no, we really don't usually do it, but,
You could appeal it if you weren't happy.
yeah, I think that this is not the type of overly complex matter.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that if a future car would have the same.
We'll indicate
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
We'll talk
Yeah, yeah,
about
yeah,
up to
yeah.
10,000
Yeah, yeah.
and put that in there.
Yeah, no, it's not tied to this particular vehicle.
No, and we circulate those
Yeah.
decisions internally.
Yeah.
If you wanted to submit a proposed draft decision, you can do that, but I don't think you need, I don't really think you need to do that under these circumstances, okay?
All right.
So I guess congratulations on the resolution of your matter. It doesn't look like everyone is thrilled or enamored with this, but I think you've made the right decision. Thanks a
Thank
lot,
you.
folks.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir, and thank you, Mr. Prondak, for your kindness.
Do we need to vote on anything?
We're going to, why don't you hold on for 2 seconds?
Yeah.
We're going to vote that that this matter has been satisfactorily resolved,
Okay,
and we're going to have
Yeah.
reasonable conditions
Yeah.
that are going to be attached and would be enforceable.
okay.
So, all those in favor?
Checking, aye.
So we've voted this.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. You want to take a run at this?
Sure, I'll take one.
Great. Joe, thank you. We have this next one coming up, so you want to get some water, or
I do actually, yeah.
then we'll get this next one going. You want any of this stuff?
Yeah, sure.
Definition of commercial, this,
In that case would be good.
this, and there's the
I know I read this, but I forgot about it.
picture of this, and we don't get this. and Here's the mascot commercial
Okay.
regulations. and Here are the people who voted in favor.
Oh, yeah, I got that,
and
yeah.
the stuff, yeah. It is. That.
I think that's a better solution.
Oh, I do too. I don't like giving variances here.
That magnetic, they're under, like,
Come on. Have your kids draw a cartoon.
the kids go out and blow it up. Okay.
So then, what's the next one is the
Fence.
fence.
This is, yeah. Okay, we'll wait till Mr. Prondak comes back.
Oh, yeah, I'll go get him. Oh, he probably is.
Well, he's probably just taking his leave here. He's been here a long time.
So I was out at Snowmass Aspen last weekend to be a speaker on this national CLE thing for environment. Well, the Colorado Bar Association runs this thing in all these different sections. But there's a real estate, environmental, and land use section.
Really?
So I had to talk for an hour about all the leading land use cases for the last year nationwide. And of course, I have it on, they said you have to bring a laptop. You have to bring your own all the way out to Colorado. And I'm looking at the computer, and I think I've finished because I've run out of time. It says 7:27. Well, my computer wasn't on the same
Time zone,
what
yeah.
time. So they're like, no, you still have 20. I don't have 20 more minutes to talk about it. I've done everything.
Joe, are you all set for our second
I am all
hearing?
set.
Okay, great. We're going to call to order our second hearing, and this is a unique situation. This is the application of the Milton Building Commissioner requesting the board to convene a public hearing in a matter wherein a variance was granted for a property at 36 Miller Avenue. And as part of that variance, one of the conditions was that an appropriate fence, 8 feet high, shall be installed and maintained at the rear of the property at 36 Miller Avenue at the expense of the applicant once a subdivision, which was approved by the board, is completed. And to date, the appropriate fence has not been installed, and apparently an agreement between the parties in interest apparently Richard Craig, Mindy Jackal, and the Inspectional Services Department has not been achieved. And so we're here to see if the fence is going to be installed or what other relief should be granted, and whether that variance should be amended, enforced, or revoked by the Board of Appeals for non-compliance. So are the parties here on this particular project? So do you want to come up here and grab a seat and...
My husband had to leave. He had to go to work. So.
Oh, that's too bad.
Lucky him.
So why doesn't everyone introduce themselves?
My name is Mary Craig. I live at 36 Miller Ave, and we were the family acquiring the variance.
Okay. And your name's in...
Mindy Jackal, and I live at 270 Lyman Road. We're in a butter. And this is my husband, Dr. Jeffrey Jackal.
Dr. Jeffrey? Yep. Okay, great. Just let me write that down or I'll forget it. Everyone in the world has the cold or a flu or whatever is going around, and
It's endemic right now.
it,
Take care of people, and you're gonna get a cold.
7 to 10 days, I think. It's just, it tends to be gruesome, so good luck there. And Mr. Prondak, welcome to the Board of Appeals again.
Thank you again.
And do you want to help us with the status of this matter and what maybe we can get the positions of the parties and how this can be discussed and hopefully resolved?
Yes.
Thank you.
Joe Prondak, Building Commissioner. So just, I'll try and be as brief as possible. In 2011, this board granted a variance to the Craigs. They owned, within the family, they owned side-by-side parcels, one on Craig Street, one on Horton Place. And they did a subdivision that put a property line within 2 feet of an existing barn. So they needed a variance for that, and that was the reason that they were here. And that variance was granted, and there was a condition, condition number 3, in fact, it said an appropriate fence, 8 foot in height, shall be installed and maintained at the rear of the property at 36 Miller Ave. You might have gotten the
Yeah, there were
address
few,
wrong.
Yeah.
At the expense of the applicant once the subdivision is completed. So that condition was there. There have been several attempts over the years for this office to seek compliance with that condition, and we've had difficulty in achieving that. There was also there was apparently a lot of junk, probably the father of
My
Ms.
father-in-law
Craig.
owned the barn, and one of the reasons for acquiring it is it needed a new roof. The sides were falling apart. He has Alzheimer's and was hoarding, and there was toilets and there were things out back, and there's no question it was unsightly. And acquiring it was goal number 1 was to bring it back to life.
Yeah. So the debris that was strewn about, for the most part, has been abated, that part of the violation. But the fence remains in question. Mrs. Craig argues that the fence doesn't do any good, and Ms. Jackal, who is the abutter, has a position that she did want the debris cleaned up, and that some of the things that currently go on the property remain unsightly to her, other than the debris, and that it is somewhat clear to me that because of the topography of the land, Mrs. Jackal being on the low point and the Craigs being on the high point, an 8-foot fence somewhere along the rear property line wouldn't block the view to the property. So although the condition was put in there, it may not have been carefully thought out. So I would like to see some sort of a resolution here, and possibly in the form of an amendment to the variance that would somehow satisfy Ms. Jackal, or the Jackals, but we would need to hear more from them as to what that satisfaction could be.
Okay. You want to address that issue?
Well, I have a lot of pictures here, if you would want me to come over there and show you
Just
all mine.
pass them along, that's fine.
And, well, I
This is-
have them on my,
This is,
Oh, I'm sorry.
this is the
iPad.
fence that was constructed. And this was done several years ago, and we just found that that was not going to be suitable and did not meet the standards of the agreement.
How high is it?
8 feet.
That's 8 feet.
But it's one panel.
No, but I didn't ask that. I asked whether, just wanted to get an idea about the height, that's all. That's all I asked.
I think you have to see the rest of the pictures, too.
No,
And
I just said, I
also,
just wanted to know whether that was 8 feet, that's all.
it's not in the right place.
That's what I was asking.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So you have other photographs you want to show us?
Yeah.
Okay, why don't you,
Over there.
yes, please. You can swing around and see these.
I'm
if you
okay.
want. Okay.
I live there.
Okay,
Maybe I will.
thanks, Joe.
Okay, so this is my house, and this is my view looking up my backyard at their barn, and at one time, they had 2 boats and a canoe thrown over there. And then this is their boat next to their house, where they leave it when they use it, I guess in the spring and summer and early fall. And I can't see it when it's here next to their house. And, see, that's another picture of the boat next to their house. And then this is from my back patio, and I look up and I see that fence, and it does nothing. And I think Mr. Prondak had asked them to remove it, and they didn't remove it, and it's a real eyesore to us.
That one panel,
To look
yeah.
at that one panel
Okay.
there. And this is the barn, and they always leave this cart there. We don't know what it is, like a trailer cart. And to my knowledge, there wasn't supposed to be any unused equipment there. And then they also have 3 ladders on that barn. And I've had experience with this, that someone could take one of those ladders, come right down the hill, put that up against my house, break into one of my upstairs windows, and I feel the ladders are unused equipment. I'm unhappy about that. This is my property line down here. You can see this metal post. Oops, okay. And this is, we're constantly getting like garbage and stuff thrown down. These are just some of the things.
Is it thrown
that-
down or is it just blow down?
I don't
with
know if
the-
it blows down. This is, they have a swing set up there that looks like it's about to fall over, and there's a lot of stuff underneath the swing set. And
Grandkids.
That's what kids do.
so, and then this is from my street, and you can look from all the way down my street, and it's like it's up on a pedestal, the barn and the boat has a cover, and the cover's all tied up. And, you know, there's a neighbor that lives next door, and you can see there's a pretty white fence that the neighbor put all around their yard, and it's right next to that. And we would like to see a fence, and this is how, at the last meeting 8 years ago, they were supposed to put the fence up on top here, because if they put an 8-foot fence up on top here, it would cover, you know, most of the barn. And so that's really what we would like to see that fence. If they continue the fence along here.
So
And
that's
you
saying-
were
that's-
the one who did this. And,
I'm sorry.
I thought it was.
Don't hold it
when
against me.
When I got it in the mail, I thought that it was written up wrong. And I didn't say anything for a long time, and then when they started to put a boat up there, that was when I complained, because I said, well, nothing is supposed to be behind that barn. And even though it's legal in Milton to have a boat in your yard, there was supposed to be nothing behind that barn.
Okay.
So that's
Now,
our-
let me just ask you this. Are you suggesting that a fence of similar design and materials, like the white fence, should just be extended across.
That would be lovely.
And do you know how high that fence is
I
approximately?
don't think that's an 8-foot-high fence.
It's about 4 feet.
About 4
But
Okay.
if they put an 8-foot one, and it was a nice, white, professionally built fence, across there, that would be really nice.
Or would
So
you rather
there's a-
have the 4-foot fence?
No,
Or
no,
you-
I'd
you
rather
want-
have the 8-foot.
You'd rather have the 8,
yeah,
okay,
yeah.
all right. And so the two things you're looking for is the construction of the 8-foot white, I'll call it picket fence, I don't know what technically it is.
Right, right.
And the removal of the ladders from the sides of the,
Yes,
from the side of
and
the barn.
this cart that's not being used, and the boat too. I don't see why they can't put that boat next to where they keep it in the summer. There's really no reason why the boat has to be stored behind the barn in the fall and the winter. Let me go back to the pictures where the boat is next to their house, and it's fine there. They live across the street from a parking lot. I just can't understand why they have to put the boat there when they know that it annoys me. And I have a whole bunch of things written down if you'd like me to sit
No,
back down. and
where
read
is that
them.
side? Is that,
This
is that on the driveway?
Yes, that's their driveway.
Okay. All right, thank you. This has been very, very helpful.
Okay.
Do you want to discuss any of these issues?
I would
That'd be
love
great.
to.
Sure.
When we had the variance meeting, acquiring that property seemed like it was so simple because it was my mother-in-law's and it was going to be ours and we were going to make it better. And so it was all positive. And the barn is beautiful. All sides, it's stunning, if you ask me. I may be biased. But there were no plot lines that defined where Mrs. Jekyll's property was, but where she was so, repulsed by this mess, and it was a mess, I assumed that she was living in her neighbor's house, to be honest. And I thought, okay, putting up a fence at the border to block this, okay, we can do that. So when we left that meeting, we met with the Jekylls in the backyard to kind of discuss, what do you want, kind of. And, we had the details of what was required, but we wanted them to be happy. And that's when we realized that our property lines abut behind the play structure down a hill. So the requirement was to put a fence at the borders of our property. And that didn't block the barn. So we agreed out there in the backyard that this fence on this property line would not effectively do what Mrs. Jekyll needed. So I said, what if I planted 6 arborvitae bushes, big high bushes, right in the spot that we're talking about putting a new fence now? And she said that would be great. And I planted them, and you were grateful, and you appreciated it, and you said that it looked nice. You remember.
Oh, are they still alive and
They are
well?
not alive, because they died in like 2 years, but everything was then, we immediately started cleaning the area, and we refurbished the entire face of the barn with new T11, and we painted it. And we never heard anything, nothing, for many, many years. And that cost me about $500 to plant those, and I was more than happy to do it because I don't want Mrs. Jekyll to not be happy. So it was April of 2016, this is 5 years later. Mrs. Jekyll asked if she could take some of the rocks off of our property, big boulders out of the hill, because she was building a rock wall. And my husband said no, it would compromise the hill. So that next day, I got a call from the town stating there was a complaint filed. And I said, why? And so I said, can you schedule a time to come? I'd like you to see the situation. I called Mindy and I said, Mindy, did you call and complain? And she said, if I had not denied her the rock, she would not have called.
No, that's.
And I said, okay, Okay, so the town came out, I had a conversation, I believe his name was Jay, began with a B.
Yes, sure.
He came out and I explained the situation, and he said, don't do anything, I will talk, you'll hear from me. And I didn't hear from him. And so we just, again, more time has passed. In December, so in November of 2007, we got a letter and a call from Birch that we were not in compliance. And I asked Birch, can you come so that I can explain the situation? I explained the situation and he said, you could file for a variance or you could just comply. And I said, well, the variance doesn't define how long it has to be. It does define how high it has to be. So we went and ordered, you can't buy an 8-foot fence at Home Depot. You can't. It's a custom fence, so an additional $500 to buy a small stretch of fence to put on our borders because I know it has no purpose. And to me, it felt insulting, it felt inappropriate, it looks like I did something malicious, but if I didn't do it, I was going to get fined. So my husband and myself and the kids, we constructed this short little fence that at all times, I have always said, we will gladly remove it. The only reason it went up is because we didn't want to get fined. And this is where we stand. And so then I had, Mrs. Jekyll and I said, this is, she wished she'd never come to the meeting. We had all this whole conversation out back, and I said, I will gladly take this down. What if I write up a letter that you and I present to Joe to say, we approve that this meets the variance, and we both agree we want to take it down? Can we do that? And Mindy said, I will only sign it if you clean up this other area of my yard, which is it's just nature. It's a nature egress between her neighbor and us. So I said, okay, I will. So I went home and I hired a landscaper for $300. So now I've paid $500 for shrubs, $500 for the fence, and now I've paid an additional $300 to hire a landscaper to completely clear out this area. There was some metal debris under, so it was a good thing. I don't regret it. But it is a natural slope that has trees that you're not going to go down and rake all the time. It's sort of the egress between the space that your neighbor and you don't use. It's your privacy. So yes, this fence looks horrendous, and I don't want anybody to think that we did it out of spite. We did it out of the fact that the notice said if we didn't do something in 30 days, we would be facing a consequence. So we felt like we had no choice. And at this point, the barn is not, the complaints that were legitimate that Mindy had do not exist anymore. There is no, and putting our boat there is not debris. We agree.
No, nobody's suggesting that, but it seems to me there are three issues here. One is the boat, and if you left the boat on the side driveway, apparently that's not visible to Mindy.
But it's visible to my other neighbors. The law says that it has to be this much off your property. This is behind her neighbor's house. It's not behind Mindy's house.
Oh, right, but I don't know what the zoning bylaw says about boats.
Joe does. He already
Yes,
told
he
me.
does. And whether.
Boat is okay where it is.
No, it's
Yeah, but is it okay if it's behind the house so that it upsets?
It has to be 30 feet back from this street, and,
It can be right up
Yeah.
against the rear property line, it has to
Yeah.
be 20 feet from the sideline, that's
Yeah.
the only criteria. It's spelled out in the bylaw.
Yeah. And how about the ladders on the side of the barn? Is that really a big deal to you?
I mean, they're not unsightly. They actually,
Well, they may be, but I think it's not a fantasy for Mindy to suggest that people of ill repute could take those
don't think
and
that
use
that-
them to break into anybody else's.
we could lock them. We could lock them there. I mean, they're just on the side of the
So you could secure those in
Yes.
some way that they're not
Absolutely.
accessible.
Yes,
And
they're not unsightly.
what about extending the fence, the white fence?
I have
across?
no desire to invest any more in fencing because the problem is gone. And when I was here, there was no property lines for me to, like, what I agreed to didn't exist because she wasn't the house behind me, she's the next house. And I don't think, putting a fence up, that separates my property from the house behind, At some point,
That
I
was
may
a
want to.
condition of the variance, that's all I'm saying. It was
Well,
the
the condition of the
variance.
variance was to was to put a fence at our borders that would block the barn, and that is impossible. And I guess that's my point. The variance of the way it was written was impossible for me to achieve. I could not block the barn with a fence on our abutting property lines. It's impossible.
Right, it may be impossible, if that's the remedy that the board issued as a condition, then if it's fulfilled, it is what it is.
But I think what was fulfilled is the bushes represent
Yeah, but they're dead and apparently haven't been replaced.
I guess I wouldn't want to put a fence in that area. I would rather have something organic. I'd put the bushes back.
What's the area?
You want to have a copy of the variance here.
That's what I was going to ask.
What's the area of the fence, the lineal area of the fence if it's constructed according to the
It didn't,
decision?
it said appropriate.
No, that's all right. But factually, Joe, do you know what is the lineage, how many lineal feet of fencing is required under the decision?
Well, again, the decision is not specific, and that's why we're here. What Mindy is suggesting tonight is that an existing fence be continued for a certain distance behind the barn and then beyond the barn to block out some of that area that the Craigs now use for storage.
Right, and how far is that off the lot line?
I quite honestly not sure on that.
We'll move the boat right beside the swing set. I mean, if it's a matter of getting the debris out from behind the barn, because remember, it is only the barn area that we are in dispute. And this is what I struggle with. Every time I try to resolve something with Mindy, she points to something else that has nothing to do with the problem at hand.
Well, that's okay. The important thing is whether you're in compliance with the decision.
So I will happily move my boat
But
away from that
the
barn.
decision doesn't even talk about the boat. The
I
decision
know.
just says that you have to have an appropriate fence, 8 feet high, right?
Correct.
That's the only, it doesn't talk about debris, it doesn't talk about equipment, it doesn't talk about...
It talks about no debris or unused equipment or unsightly materials shall be stored in the back or near the barn.
Yeah, well, we're not really talking about anything like that. We're talking about the fence.
Let me ask you this. Once we define the area, the lineal feet involved here, which Joe can determine, would you be amenable if they presented you with a landscaping plan that showed some type of large bush, like an arborvitae or some other plant that you may want to suggest that would be a substitute for the fence?
We tried that and it didn't work.
Oh, why didn't it work?
Somehow they died when you.
No, but
Because
see,
it's a wooded area.
no, but see, if you agree on the nature of the planting, okay, then we could write a decision having that planting put along that area in somewhat mature trees or bushes so that they're not little stubbies, and that they be maintained. And that if they die, they'd be replaced. We've done that many times, and landscapers do that type of plan on a daily basis. Now, my question to you is that something that you want to discuss here? No, yes, I don't, that's up to you. Because that's something that the applicant here seems to prefer. You're not required to do it. We wrote the decision says offense. But is that an alternative, an equivalent alternative that would protect you if the location of the boat is changed, if the ladders on the side were locked into place so that they're not accessible, and the arborvitae fencing was put into place within a particular period of time. Now, it's the middle of winter, so you're probably talking, April or May or some reasonable time. Does that make sense to you?
Well, everything we've tried to do this before, and it didn't work with bushes, and I don't think it's going to work again.
Well, why is that? Is there something in the soil that prevents the bushes?
Probably. It's a very rocky
I think
ledge.
the issue is going to be where would that fence be? I think that's the key thing, because if you put anything down at the lot line, the slope is like this, and it's all rock.
Okay, so are you
Everything's gonna
are you
die.
willing to change the location of the fence or the arborvitae?
I really don't want to put the fence between myself and my other neighbor, because at some point we have a vision of filling in it's a slope, but we do have a vision of kind of filling in that area and reclaiming a bunch of land that is right now.
But if I would just add quickly to that, that would require a special permit from the zoning board of appeals, so you would have to come back here for
Yeah,
that anyway.
and
so that-
maybe we would, and
And maybe you wouldn't get it either.
And maybe we wouldn't get it.
Under these circumstances.
maybe. But I guess what I'm saying is, what was unsightly is no longer unsightly.
Right,
So-
but that's something you were required to do
I
anyway.
understand, but I also.
Thank you for that.
But I also feel as if I put the fence up at the exact point where I was defined to within the variance. It was on our property.
That's the entire extent of the fencing you think you were required to build?
Right, because it
Under
says an appropriate fence. I
But
mean,
my-
that's not an appropriate fence by any stretch.
But where I was told to put it is on the point is, what was asked of me, which was put a fence on our borders to block the barn. And it was impossible. So I guess that's my point.
Well, it
But
may
it
not.
doesn't say that doesn't say anything like that in the variance.
And then it just says, an
just
appropriate fence
fence.
8 foot in height shall be installed and maintained.
Yeah.
So I
But
think, I read the
This is-
appropriate fence
The
too.
sign details state here that Mrs. Jekyll that the location of the barn is relative to her property line. She explained that the debris and old equipment stored in the back of the barn is in direct view of her property, which partially abuts the 36 Miller Ave. The following decision, the applicant agreed to install and maintain an 8-foot fence on his property line near the property line of Miss Jekyll's lot. So
And you're saying.
This is very
you're
far
saying
away.
It's just not going to be effective. That's why you don't want to build
Well,
it.
where's the, I'm trying to figure out, I can't figure out where the property lines are working out.
We don't have
I
a
think I
plot
can,
plan.
I can run and possibly get one of those. I just want to point out that she referred to Jay Bolier's
Yeah.
meeting, and he did send, subsequently to the meeting, send her a letter saying that the fence needed to be installed. That was in 2015. In 2017, I sent a letter saying that the fence needed to be installed. And then again, in 2018, Birch sent a letter saying the fence needed to be installed.
15 is the first time we got one, so I don't know whether some of the typos or the errors that may have
Well, that's
existed.
all right.
We
When-
only got the 2015.
We're talking about here and now
This-
and what's going to happen.
But this is her property line, and there's the
I need a plot plan. I can't, I'm a real estate attorney, I need to see a plan.
Okay.
But this is where the fence is, as close to her property line on ours, and there's the barn.
Okay. Well, let's get the plot plan. Joe will be back in 2
It
minutes.
seems we're arguing two different things. It seems that you're arguing that the purpose of the variance no longer exists, but it's still, there is this variance with these conditions, and
Right.
they're not met.
But,
So
but the fence,
we're not redetermining the actual original variance, are we?
No, we're not.
but the fence did not have a stipulation to length. It had height, so I
It
literally.
says an appropriate fence.
But
I
what-
disagree that
but what
8 foot
is-
in height.
What is appropriate when it only blocks a dirt hill?
It would be a reasonable test, and I don't think that one panel could be considered reasonable.
This is where it lands. So would this be a little further? Like, it blocks nothing. She can see right over it. It wouldn't even block our swing set. That's my point. Putting any
Well,
more.
let's get-
Larry, that's why we would be happy to have a fence installed on where it would make sense, on the top of the hill there.
But that's not what the variance says.
With a continuation, but it would be reasonably close. I think at the most, you're talking about probably 7 feet from the property line, and that comes together, because it's a very odd property line, and the line goes up the hill, so it would actually converge onto the property line. So,
Well, let's get the plot plan from Mr. Prondak, and we'll be able to deal with this.
I couldn't call up a
Hereby request
copy.
that the variance granted be amended for enforced or revoked or deemed
While
appropriate.
Mr. Prondak is getting that, we're going to take a temporary recess for about 3 minutes. No more. Stay right here, and I will be right back.
Okay.
Do a bathroom break real quick. I can go into 3 minutes.
Is there a water bubbler?
Why didn't they just say that? I never call them water bubblers. You are. We call them water fountains.
She's such a liar.
just trying to get this.
We have an assessor's map, or the best I can come up with on a quick.
That's fine.
So, an
So, why don't you
appropriate
tell us-
fence 8 foot in height shall be installed and maintained at the rear of the property located at 36 Miller Avenue at the expense of the applicant. So, 36 Miller Avenue is this guy
If you
here,
want to come up, you can.
is this guy here.
Okay, good. Okay.
So that's 36.
Yeah, thank you, that's all right.
So at the rear, so is 17A now attached to 40?
No, now attached to 36.
It's attached to 36? Okay. So the rear property line's 86.34 feet. And it's right here. And you're here, right? You're 38? 270? Is 270 yours?
We're 270.
Okay, so that's like half, like a little bit more, maybe 50 feet.
So I'll suggest there was a problem, because when the variance was applied for, the property line went like this. It included all of this. It was our whole backyard was part of the variance. It wasn't just the one.
But the language of the variance says at the
understand.
rear of 36. So all I'm trying to figure out, the rear of 36 is just this.
At the time,
period.
the rear of 36 was there that included.
That's
the-
34.
I know, but that was the variance that they had applied for.
Was for 40 and 36, not 34.
It was just the barn, that's it.
It's not this guy, it's this one. 40 and 36 were the subject of the variance, not 34. And so the line that we're talking about is this one here, which is
Okay.
roughly half of your backyard.
Okay.
That's the way it was written.
The other thing I did want to mention is that I didn't want to put this up. I felt as if I had to, and I asked Birch, and I know he was new at the time, and I don't want to throw him under the bus, and it's not my intent, but I asked if one stretch of fence would meet this requirement because it didn't stipulate the distance, and he said yes. He believes so. So I guess when we question the appropriateness, there was somebody from town who advised that it would be okay.
Right.
Because it didn't have purpose, I guess, and he knew that it was like a requirement, and so we really followed it to the letter of the law, and I don't want the fence there. I will happily take it down. It's not meeting any purpose. But I guess my point is, the variance about the fence was unachievable, and I would like to remove it. Anything else is a different problem. The vote is legally where it can be. It's a different problem. The barn, the toilets, the things
Well, the
that
only
were-
thing that's
We're talking
before
about the
us,
fence.
the only thing that's before us is the enforcement request on the fence, right?
And whether what is up is appropriate, based on,
Right?
It can't be appropriate. It's
Isn't
only
it,
a
just-
small
yeah, forget it,
piece.
yeah.
but
But that's the only thing that's before us, is the complaint about the fact that,
That's correct. In Birch was new, and he
Yeah.
made an error in saying that 1 foot piece of fence was adequate. However, I
yeah,
subsequently.
yeah, no, I'm okay with that.
Put a fence along the entire
So
back property line. and
isn't it
wasn't
very, very
complied with.
simple? Either the fence gets put on the rear property line as
Right.
as the decision
As-
calls for.
Yeah.
Or the parties reach some type of an agreement that's an alternative to the fence, and that's installed at an appropriate seasonal time. And if they're not able to do it, then we just want the
Then we have a-
variance complied with.
Yeah.
Period. That's it.
But part of the
Mm-hmm.
issue is to put a fence along the rear property line is at the bottom of the slope.
We understand that.
So
Mm-hmm.
the more appropriate place would be at the top of the slope, as Mrs.
Right.
Yes, but the issue about that I have is that then there's a problem where you have a fence up at the height, your property line's downhill, somebody decides to just use that property for the next 20 years, and they acquire the rest of your land by adverse possession. We never recommend having somebody put a fence that far from a property line because of the risk of adverse possession. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't have never advised a client to do that. So that's probably why it was 8 feet. Because under normal circumstances, you wouldn't want an 8-foot fence. You'd put up like,
can't even get an 8-foot
4.
fence.
Yeah,
You just
exactly.
order it.
So probably the reason behind the requirement for the 8 feet was the recognition that it was going to be downslope near the property line, which would be the safest place to put it in terms of adverse
But
possession.
even at that
We didn't
point,
have property
an
lines.
8-foot fence at the bottom of the
Yeah.
slope, the slope has to be 20 feet high.
Yeah,
So the
right.
8-foot fence still wouldn't have achieved.
Still doesn't, yeah.
It doesn't achieve the full purpose.
and for us, it's financially crippling.
That-
You should have dealt with that at
Yeah,
the
that's
time
a
of the variance.
separate, that's a whole separate discussion about whether or not you want to pay for it. But we're just trying to figure out what the requirement is. And so there's an enforcement provision of this provision of the variance that says that you have to put in an appropriate 8-foot fence along the rear property line, which is not happening.
No, presently.
Yeah.
Okay, so from my perspective here, it's really very, very simple, even though it may not be acceptable to you. The decision is the decision with all of its warts and disadvantages. It requires the fence, and we can give you some reasonable time to build the fence.
What is appropriate?
The appropriate is to enforce the decision of the Board of Appeals. You didn't appeal from it.
It was to block the barn. We agreed to put a fence up that would block what was unsightly. And
But you
so.
won't allow the fence to be built in an area where it will block the barn. You don't want to have it built
Because our properties are, what she came to the meeting and defined her property to be isn't, in my opinion. I think the bullet that was put in there was under false pretense, because she.
Nothing was under false
her
pretense.
property-
You may be mistaken, but.
Mistaken.
But the point is this, this decision is, 10 years old or more, and we're not going to go back and rewrite a 10-year-old
I
decision.
guess the question is, do you want us to extend the current fence up that hill?
No.
So,
What we want, what I put on the table for you, Mary, is we will accept a continuation of the fence along that property line. 4 feet is fine, up until up until the end of your property, and that.
in the middle of my property.
Yes, it would be in the middle of your property. That's what we would accept. If you would accept that, we're done.
Well, I think the easy way to do this is to render a decision ordering this condition to be complied with.
Right.
And if you people can reach a sensible agreement, you should do it, and we'll modify our decision. And it's in the middle of winter, and so nobody's going to require a fence to be built at this point in time, but at some reasonable time in the spring. And if you can get together with Mr. Prondak's help, there are private mediators you can hire. There are lots of people who can. You should be able to do it yourselves. You people are talking, and there's goodwill back and forth, I think. But
I think so. I think it's just gone on for too long, and the fact that little piece of fence is being called appropriate, I think Mindy found very offensive at the time.
I found it offensive too.
So-
The town forced me. I would be fined if I didn't. I
Well, I think
explained
you
that to
both
you.
clarified that now, and I think now we have a better understanding of what your intentions were. And like you said, I think now you can mediate it amongst yourselves with that
Well,
information.
can we talk further? Would you be happy if we just remove that fence and not have that fence?
Well, I
And
think that fence has to go. I mean, that's.
I would love to take that fence
But I think
down.
this is all stuff that you can speak amongst yourselves about and
But I
not have
think
it before the board.
But I guess my point is, can we come to an agreement to remove this portion of the variance? Because where we were requested to put this fence does not
You've
feed
said
the
that-
purpose.
you've said
But
that
but
by
if
now.
you worked out something,
Can we come to the agreement to
and you
remove the
could,
bullet?
Yes.
then you could apply to the board for a modification.
Can we do it now? Can
No.
we agree to,
No.
You're not anywhere near an agreement
We cannot do
on
that
anything.
because we have to agree to something else instead.
why do we have to agree to something else
Well,
instead?
because
This is
we're not in
something-
compliance with.
Yeah.
We,
Time out, folks. Time out, folks. We're here for a limited purpose.
Right.
And we want to extend professional courtesies to everybody, but we're not a debating society. We've got another hearing here that's a complicated hearing. So that I think what we should do here, I'm going to propose that we continue, let me see if we can do this by agreement, that we will agree to continue this matter for a period of time. I would say something like the second week or third week in April. And then during that period of time, if you can negotiate a solution to the fence problem, then with Mr. Prondak's help, he's willing to help you, then submit something to the board, and if it's by agreement, we'll amend the variance accordingly, and everyone will be happy. If you're not able to reach an agreement, then we'll issue an order, because it will then be close to springtime, that the fence be built as provided for in the decision, and if then you can fuss it out in court or do whatever you want to do if you have to.
An independent mediator, I would suggest, would be a lot cheaper.
So then the question is, if they do not comply and build a fence, what penalty do they experience?
Well, the court could compel them to build a fence.
Do we have to go to court, or does that have to?
Well, the building commissioner would be issuing a non-compliance order and would be following through to make sure that there is compliance. But I think it's his hope, and it's certainly ours, that You're both very, very nice people, and some sensible arrangement should be sought. And I agree with Therese that if for whatever reason you're having difficulties achieving an agreement that maybe varies the variance that was issued, there are some wonderful people out there who are professional mediators, and they, for relatively short money as compared to the heartache of going into the court system and going there, that may be able to be of assistance to you. Not that you're required to do it.
It'd be
but-
cheaper than a fence.
Right, that's what but
Yeah,
cheaper
it
than a
would be.
fence, cheaper than a lawyer.
Yeah.
So that's my suggestion. So let me ask you this: is everyone in agreement that this hearing gets continued until let's say the middle of April, and that well whatever.
Can we take a few more minutes to see if we can come to a resolve? Because I would be willing to plant the bushes. Bushes, because,
But we have another hearing.
That's going to take a long time to.
And, right.
Sure.
I
I think what we should do is.
I don't want this
is,
going on much longer. It's really not good for my health.
Continue the hearing as you suggested. I'll meet with the two parties together in the same room, and we'll, at the site, on an appropriate weather day, and we'll see if we can come to an agreement. Okay. And then we'll present that to the board.
I think a lot of your misunderstandings were cleared up tonight, though. I mean, to the extent that that the interpretation of that one panel of fence, which I can understand could be seen as being offensive.
We spoke about
But I
it.
think that with that being said, I think that you guys can come to this is a great opportunity to come to that resolution.
It would be nice.
So
Save these pictures from the scrapbooks.
so
Yeah, we will hold that in the file. We don't have that.
sometime in the middle of April.
Yeah, we have to have a date certain.
Yes, absolutely.
So I'm away the school vacation week, which is April 15th to, what's Milton's school vacation week?
Something after that.
The 15th, yeah. So
I'm
after,
away the 8th and the 9th.
Okay, so it's still,
right, towards the end of the month would be
sure.
fine.
We have Tuesday the 23rd
Okay.
of April, Wednesday the 24th.
Tuesday, the 23rd, is that?
Yeah, that's good.
Is that fine? Has everyone agreed to that? So
Tuesday, the 23rd
Of
of
April?
April, 4/23, we get 23.
4:23, and that'll be right here at 7:30.
It'll be the same panel, and
And what we're going to do is we're going to give to Mr. Prondak a form for everyone to sign, so that we're extending this out to the 23rd, which,
I'm the applicant, so I think I could do.
okay, then you can sign. Well, you are the applicant, that's right, okay, that's fine. And this is you agree to this as well?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's what we'll do, with the hope that you can reach an agreement without the need for a mediator through Mr. Prondak, but if you can't, I'd certainly advise you to seek the services of a mediator.
Yeah, a real estate bar association has a mediation service. They're all
they
real
do,
estate
a lot of them
people.
are retired judges, they've seen all this, they have really creative solutions that a lot of us don't even think of. And it's short money compared to what you would be spending in litigation.
And so if you have any trouble, we can get you that address
Yeah.
and the phone number and all of that. And
We can work.
I'm hopeful that we won't even have to go there.
that's my view as well, okay? Great, nice to see everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Prondak.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe. Well,
I'm not going to pay for that.
There wasn't a
on.
question there.
Joe, do you want to take this back?
That was very helpful. Thank you.
You have your keys, okay, good.
Thanks, Joe.
We're on mic, so you have to be.
No, I didn't say anything.
That's,
Patience and tolerance.
I know.
This is going to be really quick, right?
I know I could have been in Newburyport tonight. I would be done by now.
have a third hearing.
There's nothing to write about that.
All righty, folks, if we're all set, welcome to the 8 o'clock hearing at 9:50 this evening. This is on the application of Rawad Boomjahad, did I pronounce that?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay, great. Who is the applicant, and the applicant is seeking a use variance and a special permit so as to be able to buy, sell, exchange, or assemble second-hand motor vehicles or parts thereof at the Milton Auto Repair, 944 Canton Avenue. This property is located in the Residence B residential district. The site has a retail gasoline station and a place for outdoor power equipment sales and a repair facility at 940 Canton Avenue. It's a pre-existing non-conforming use. And so the present use is seeking to be expanded. So I think I've sufficiently defined the advertisement. We'll have as evidence for this particular hearing the application for special permit and variance dated November 14th, 2018. We have a denial letter by Mr. Prondak dated February 22nd, 2016. We have an addendum to the application filed by Attorney Edward Corcoran I think still of Quincy, Massachusetts. You haven't moved to Milton?
I've not moved. I live in Milton, but my office is.
Yes, well, I saw a Corcoran Law Office in the square the other day, and I didn't know whether you changed your mind. And it defines the relief requested, a discussion of why the relief should be granted, and a conclusion with several photographs of the subject property from various dimensions. So all that will be evidence at the hearing. The rules here of the board, we'll hear from the applicant, then we'll hear from anybody present who wishes to ask questions of the applicant or to speak in support of the application. We'll also hear from anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the application. The hearing is being tape recorded, so that would ask that anyone who's going to speak up nice and loud and clear, even though it's a small room. Tell us your name and address so we'll know who is speaking, and that's helpful if we have to revert to the tape as part of the proceeding. We did receive one piece of correspondence. Did you receive a copy of this? Okay. It's fairly lengthy, but let me just summarize it. It's from Ray and Brenda Keneally of 954 Canton Avenue in Milton. It's dated January 6, 2019. The Keneallys write that they're unable to attend the public hearing regarding this application, that the Keneallys are longtime residents of 954 Canton Avenue, and they are expressing concerns about this application. They respect the business owner and support his business endeavors, but they say that if the variance is approved, it will have a negative impact on their residents and the already congested area. They suggest that Canton Avenue is a major cut-through throughout the day. Pulling out of their driveway is a challenge. There are 3 high-volume businesses being operated on the lot at the present time, which is the Milton Auto Repair, Fran's Corner, a gas station, and Blue Hill Power Equipment Sales and Service. That there's a significant flow of customers on the site all day. That this variance to repair and sell used cars will add more customers to the site than it can properly accommodate it. They have 8 hashed parking spaces on the sides that are used for the repair business on a daily basis. They talk about an experience with a used car lot in Weymouth. They,
I know which one that is.
they understand the challenge of operating a business in a residential zone. They think the owner has done a good job keeping a balance between the two. However, this is a residential neighborhood, and adding the new business, they think, to an overcrowded lot is not in the best interest of the neighborhood and will have a negative effect on the property values. And that being said, they are adamantly opposed and do not support the addition of buying and selling used cars at Milton Auto Repair. So we thank Mr. and Mrs. Keneally for their letter. The applicants here are represented by Attorney Corcoran. Mr. Corcoran, welcome to the Board of Appeals. We're delighted to hear from you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Pleasure to be back in front of this board. I'm joined by Rob Bumjayed, who is the proprietor of Milton Auto Body, which is a tenant, operates in one of the buildings located on the property. Property is owned by a trust owned by Stephen Wells, and Mr. Wells is here as well.
And Mr. Wells.
And there are 4 other abutters to the property who are here in support of the property. They can each identify themselves. One of whom has actually been a customer of Mr. Bumjayed's relative to what we're asking for. So the application itself probably is broader than what we're really seeking relief from. This is a long-time, historically, property that is historically pre-existing non-conforming series of uses. The gas station, the service building, the equipment, outdoor equipment sales and service, the auto body, they've all been there for a long time. The property operates between 7 o'clock in the morning and 8 o'clock at night. And it's right at the corner, or just off the corner of Unquity, Blue Hills Avenue, and Canton Avenue. It is a fairly busy corner. But from the photographs that I've just took off of Google Map or Google Earth, and as you see it when you drive by, it is an extremely neat, well-maintained property. Immediately on the abutting property, and the Keneallys who wrote do live directly next door. They are the direct abutters next door.
Oh, say that again?
The Keneallys. The letter that
Are
you
that-
received is this
Blue.
next door. But between them, there is a fence and a very tall set of evergreens. They've actually grown more than anyone anticipated they might have grown. And at any one time, there are vehicles parked along that fence line that are either there because they're being repaired, have been repaired, and otherwise. The application here really deals with Mr. Bumjayed's separate application for a Class 2 auto dealer's license, authorized under Chapter 140 of the general laws, and it allows for the sale and purchase and sale of vehicles in small volumes under as a separate business. Rob operated that business in Quincy when he was a tenant at property on Copeland Street in Quincy. And essentially what he does, and the only things he's really looking for here, is that occasionally a customer of his who brings a car for repair may also request, say, do you know where, I need a car for my son, my daughter. Do you know where I can find a car? In order for him, and then what he does is he goes to the auctions and finds a car that's roughly what is being looked for, is in this price range. You might have a photograph of it, says, is this what you're looking for? Is this price worth it? And he uses that license to purchase that on behalf of the buyer, and then brings it back, will make whatever repairs he's going to make that may need to the car in his shop, and then the buyer buys it. That is the extent of the operation that he's looking to do. He can't do that here without that license. He would require a license from the town, but he also requires this permission from the board as an additional component, something that hadn't been previously operated at this facility. One of the folks who's here, Bruce Ravelson, has actually used that service 3 times. He can speak specifically to how that worked. There is no, vehicles are not parked on site. They would not be parked on site for purposes of availability for sale. We're not asking that there would be permission for any signs, and no test driving. Their vehicles are simply, if they're being parked, they're only being parked for the period of time necessary for the customer to come and pick up vehicles. There is, as any busy auto repair business would be, there is a fair amount of in and out, come and go. I've had my vehicles maintained there, so I'll drop them off, maybe take an Uber to my office, come back at the end of the day, so that when it's done, it's being parked outside, they have to store it somewhere. That's the extent of the the exterior parking. All of the work that gets done is interior to the building.
Yeah, so which building is this operating?
So these structures that are visible here, this is the canopy over the gas pumps. This is the equipment maintenance facility. This building, which looks like 2 buildings, is an office with a vehicle maintenance facility behind it. There are actually, 4 or 5 bays inside?
There's 4 lifts. It's one bay you drive in and it opens up.
And then Mr. Wells lives back here on the property. And in between, there's a sort of an area that's sort of enclosed by everything else where equipment.
Additional cars are parked and the equipment is stored.
Back here. So, and everything's fenced and everything's.
And all of that's allowable right now?
All of that's allowed because it's pre-existing non-conforming and it's consistent with what was there historically. Mr. Wells has an interesting photograph, historic photograph going back probably 150 years.
Yeah. This is what it was originally. It was
Oh, my.
1700s. It was E.F. Blackton, Foreshore and Carriage Works
Oh, wow.
from the 16th through 17th and 18th. And then
Yes.
it eventually became the first auto repair shop to service motorized cars.
So Rob wasn't around at the time, but if he were, he would have rotated the tires and lubricated.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
we were around at that time either, right?
I might have. My kids think I was. So what we're really asking, it's a very limited application, and we would ask it with specific conditions that would absolutely limit the notion of what's being required here. And the Class 2 license is renewable annually, but I would recommend that the board, in the first instance, approve a 3-year permit that would be renewable upon the application of the applicant, so that there's an opportunity to test to make sure that there's been compliance. I understand one of the concerns of one of the abutters is, all right, once it's there, who's testing it, who's paying attention? You know, obviously, Mr. Prondak pays attention to things, but, you know, putting the burden on us to come back, to demonstrate reasonable compliance, and to get permission to go forward, I think is appropriate, so that it would be I know Mr. Prondak speaks of variances, but with respect to pre-existing non-conforming uses, they really get extended or modified based on special permit requirements. And special permits are treated like special permits, and the uses have to be determined that they would not be detrimental to the neighborhood and that they're otherwise consistent with the, and I think that with respect to appropriate conditions, no vehicles stored or parked for the purpose of resale, vehicles parked solely when being held for customer pickup, no signage allowed, advertising, vehicles not parked in such a way that they would be displayed as if they were being displayed for sale, sort of unlike this photograph, which has 2 pieces of equipment out, you know, advertising what they are. I mean, that's part of what Steve is allowed to do. So nothing that would be presented as these vehicles are here for display, please come and test drive and all that. And then all of the operation takes place really, basically telephone and computer. It's all within the office. And so with that, I would ask if the board has any questions. They do have butters who are here to speak in favor of. It's a long night. They've, appreciate their willingness to hang in and be available. I know they'd like to speak if that's appropriate.
Well, we understand the need for relief, but let me ask you a question about licensing here. Why are we involved in
You're not.
the term of the license, whether it's 1 year or 3 years? It's not within our jurisdiction, is it?
No, it's not. I mean, it's renewable annually by the town. The town can
Who does
revoke
that?
it.
Is it Mr. Prondak?
The selectmen.
The selectmen, okay.
And they could revoke it annually if there were violations.
In terms of ownership here, the repair operation is Milton Auto Repair?
Correct.
And is that a corporation of some, or an LLC, or?
It's doing business as my business name is RBM Motor Masters, DBA Milton Auto Repair. So he owns.
So the name of the business that would be the applicant, it's actually correctly RBM Motor Masters, Inc., DBA Milton Auto Repair.
And just to, I can clean that up a little bit. The way it works is Rob is the tenant of Blue Hill Auto Supply Incorporated that holds the license. Milton Auto Repair's name and the building is owned by Blue Hill Auto Supply Incorporated. So I'm only here, my only part to be here is to, as the landowner, is to let you know that he is the tenant at hand. And when there is a problem on the property, whatever it is, I, as the owner of the property, take care of it. Leases are written, and in the leases, cleanliness, cars being not left, no unregistered cars out front, no eyesores, etc. And as I've said to a few people, I'm the fourth caretaker in 150 years of this property. So I've had it for 33 years, and in the 33 years, I've tried to keep it as clean as I can, probably as clean as it's ever been. And even in depicting my equipment that's out here that is on display, there are no for sale signs on the equipment. There's no price signs. There's nothing other than the machine sitting there like it was on someone's lawn. And if they would like to know the price, they can come inside and we'd be more than happy to tell them how much it costs. He is looking for the similar thing, not looking to advertise any signs of windshield stickers or antenna flags, nothing.
Why is the application filed in the name of Mr. Boumajad as opposed to the corporation? Is the license an individual license to him if it's issued? Or is it going to be issued to a corporation, or?
It has to be issued to a corporation, correct. So, and I am the corporation running the business. But initially, I've dealt with this before because I had an auto dealership before. So I did the same thing. I went in front of the board in Quincy. But you got to have the business first, and then you apply for the business license for the auto sales, a Class 2 motor vehicle resale license. And that's how it gets incorporated to the business. So it will be pretty much called, after this is approved, or, it'll be RBM Motor Masters, Inc. and Auto Sales. That will be added to the name of the business.
Doing business as Milton Auto Repair.
Yes.
The name of the applicant, I filed an application with the selectmen, and the application is made under RBM Motor Masters, Inc. At the time that I filed this application, I wasn't as clear as I should have been as to who's the applicant, corporate or otherwise, and I understood Rob to be the individual tenant operating the Milton Auto Repair on the premises. So.
But if the application is granted and the use variance is granted under these circumstances, do you agree with me that that variance would not be restricted to Mr. Boumajahad's own operation, but it would be a benefit of the property owner at this location, and that if Mr. Boumajad retired, resigned, went to Florida,
Yeah.
that you could be dealing with some other operator.
Well, after, say, it is approved and I get the license and I say, hey, I don't want to do this anymore, and I leave or I sell it to somebody else, he still has to come back again and see you guys, or in front of the board and
Well,
select.
I don't know that
No,
that's, I don't know that
you would
that's-
have to, the license has to be renewed annually with the town.
Right, and that's the license of the
That's
applicant.
that's correct.
So if the applicant retires or sells the operation, then
Somebody else would have to come in and apply to the Board of Selectmen.
Yes,
for the license.
for the license.
The
Right,
use-
but the variance would still
So I,
be in
Permit,
effect. This-
yeah.
which is, in my mind, and it's sort of akin to another matter that I had, you were not the chair of the hearing, but it is a variance in the nature of a special permit.
Yeah.
And the conditions run
Right.
to his tenancy only.
Yeah,
Because it's a business use that's unique to his use. And I think in terms of properties that are pre-existing non-conforming,
yeah, didn't we do this for the Bent factory, when we had the caterer come in?
you may
On the
have,
second floor?
when we get amendments to, I know in one instance, I sought a variance for a garage to be constructed on property because they were storing a commercial vehicle outdoors. It was not unlike the earlier. And so he went to build a garage, and the garage needed a variance from the side yard setback. As an alternative, I said, well, what if you granted a special permit in the nature of variance for him to park his vehicle outside for as long as he owns the vehicle or as long as he owns the house? And so that it was limited in time and treated it as a special permit. And the board in that case thought that that was a more appropriate form of relief, rather than to build a garage that would be permanent, essentially a permanent structure within the side yard setback. I think this is similar. I think the board has the power to craft.
You have authority for this? I've never, maybe Kathleen has heard of it. I've never heard of a variance in the nature of a special
Well, I
permit.
mean, it's called a variance, but it's not really. What you're doing is you've got a special permit for the particular use. And
They need a use variance in order to do this.
They need approval from the
Residential
board.
zone.
They need approval from the board to expand the use that's in a pre-existing non-conforming
Right.
property.
It's prohibited in a residential zone.
Everything on
Yeah, well,
the
right, but-
property is prohibited in a
Yeah, but it's pre-existing non-conforming. The sale of automobiles from this site is not permitted, and you're asking for a use variance in order to
I'm
carry
asking for a use variance.
that activity.
Doesn't run with the land, that runs to the specific tenancy. of
Okay,
this tenant.
I'd love to see some case law or some
Yeah.
legal citations for that proposition, because I've never heard of it.
No, I've seen it. I know I have.
What kind of a lease do you have?
Yeah.
What's that?
What kind of a lease, how long?
Lease,
How long is it?
He has a 5-year lease right now.
So it's a non-recorded 5-year
Yeah.
lease? Okay.
No, right now, his first lease was recorded, his lease now is non-recorded 5-year lease. And the way I write the leases is, providing the tenant is meeting all the rules of the lease, it gets extended. And we did-
Automatically?
No, we did his original lease was, I had an issue with a previous tenant. So he was evicted, and my attorney said, listen, we need to renegotiate the way this lease is written. So we gave Rob a new lease for 1 year.
Okay.
And it strictly said, if you do not meet the requirements of this lease, A, B, C, D, and E, it will not be renewed. So passed it with flying colors. At the end of the year, he was given a 2-year extension. At the end of those 2 years, he was given a 5-year extension. And each one of those, that 5-year lease has that same clause in it. If there's any trash, cars unregistered, you break the rules of the lease, it does not get renewed. So it was under my understanding, I'm only here as the chair for him, because he's the best tenant I've had in 33 years, is that this license would be to him as long as he's there. And abiding by the rules that is set forth for the license. But when he goes, that is not transferable or sellable or part of the sale to be transferred to anyone else. This is just for him. And when he goes, it goes. Because the licenses are not transferable out of town. If he moved to another place, he could come to the board and say, could I move my license from here to this place? If it was in commercial zone property, he wouldn't have to. He could just move it. But it is not to be transferred to anybody else other than him. That's what we're asking for. It's just him. If his lease is up in 3 years and he decides he wants to go purchase someplace somewhere else, that's it, it's done.
I don't have case law in front of me.
I've never
Just
heard
looking
of
at,
it.
yeah, I mean, well, I'm looking at 48, Section 6, special permit. And so I was just actually looking at a case that's very similar. It was a garage and a gas station. They wanted to add a convenience store. So that's pretty similar.
And they did that by means of
A special permit
Yep.
under 48, Section 6.
why are they using the term of variance in the nature of a special permit? Because it's not permitted use? It's expressly prohibited.
It's not expressly prohibited, it's not authorized.
Okay.
I mean, our general business zone is somewhat, I mean, the definitions are interesting, and you're allowed to do certain things, you're allowed to do other things by permit, and then other things are prohibited. This, I mean, we're in a gray area. We're not in a business zone. We are in a pre-existing non-conforming property. You're allowed to continue the pre-existing uses and any modification thereto that is reasonably related to those uses
And-
by permit.
And you're willing to stipulate that as part of any relief that the board grants, that the relief doesn't run with the land, but it's actually a special permit that's extended to the applicant or his company.
Absolutely.
In the form of a license.
Well,
We're not doing, yeah, we don't do
you're
the
not
license.
doing the license, you'd be doing a permit authorizing.
Authorizing
Authorized,
the
okay.
use.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what it would be is a motor vehicle license with restriction. That's what it would be.
No,
Not technical,
it's-
no,
that's-
that's not right.
That's
Not
from
to
the
that,
select-
that's
Yeah.
the license from this, that if the selectmen were to grant the license, it would be with restrictions that they would impose. This is would authorize the use that you're requesting.
Okay.
The selectmen would then have to determine whether or not it's appropriate to grant you the license. And that would be renewal annually. I know in other matters, I have, like this, it's not specific, I have requested relief in the nature of a variance because it's not specifically what's allowed, but to have, but.
I understand what you're saying, it just sounds like
Yeah.
sophistry to me. It's like you're making up word, not you personally, but words are being made up to get around the strict requirements of a use variance, but saying, well, it's really not a use variance because it's being offered to the individual and it doesn't run with the land and all of that. I just have never experienced anything like it. And I'd love to see some
Yeah.
authority to that effect.
So we're not planning to put for sale signs on
I
cars, not
understand.
planning to
Understand.
post them for sale?
Understand all
I
that.
get that.
We get that.
Yeah, I don't think the issue is so much about what you're planning or not planning on doing, it's really how we can craft it.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if we want to craft it
Yeah.
in the face of opposition here. Okay, well, is there anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Corcoran? You want to
No, I would
present-
like to identify the other folks who are here.
Why don't you do that?
Victor Morales,
Hi, Mr. Morales. Yep.
939 Canton Avenue, lives directly across the street. Bruce Ravelson.
I'm sorry,
I'm
Mr.
sorry.
Morales, you don't work for the applicant, do you? You have no business affiliation with them, and you're not related to them?
He is a customer and he does help us out. We help
That-
each other.
Okay, so you work there on occasion?
No, he doesn't work here. No.
Oh, okay, okay. Okay, so thank you, and you live there. Who's the next person?
Bruce Ravelson, Ravelson, at 970 Canton Avenue, and he's the one who has bought 3 vehicles through this Class 2 license process when the license was based in Quincy.
Okay.
Yep.
John Walsh, 1122 Canton Avenue, longtime resident, just up the street.
Mr. Walsh, how are you? Good, thank you for coming tonight. You don't work for the applicant or have any business affiliation with them or anything like that?
Then occasional customer.
Okay, well, okay.
And Philip with 2 L's, Warnum, W-O-R-N-U-M.
It's pronounced Warnum.
Warnum, I'm sorry.
W-O-R-N-A-M?
N-U-M.
N-U-M, yep.
And he's at 175 Sumner, which is on the corner of Sumner and Canton Avenue.
Okay, and likewise, you have no business affiliations with the applicant? Okay. Is there any other evidence you'd like to offer, Mr. Corcoran?
No, thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Let me see if the board members... Therese, do you have any questions of Mr. Corcoran on his presentation or of the applicant?
Not at the moment. I'm still trying to wrap my mind around how to...
That's fine. We'll come back. You'll have plenty of time to ask questions. Ms. O'Donnell, do you have questions of Mr. Corcoran?
No, I do not.
Or the applicant? Well, I think you've answered all the questions that I have, Mr. Corcoran. So if you have nothing else you'd like to...
No, I think we've argued it out and made the case. I think
Okay.
if the board desires some written follow-up, I'm happy to provide it, but...
Okay, let me ask this. Is there anybody present who hasn't been identified or hasn't spoken who wishes to speak in support of this application? And so there's no... Yes, sir.
Mr. Corcoran explained it very clearly, but I'll give you exactly how it worked when I bought my 3 cars. I went to...
Okay, and why don't you identify yourself?
I'm Bruce Ravelson.
Okay, Bruce, yes, okay.
70 Canton Avenue.
Sure.
I had cars repaired when Rob first opened up, and I was in the shop saying this car...
I'm sorry, would you do me one favor? Oh, you've got the microphone. Okay, great. Thank you.
I was in the shop and my Subaru was dying, and I said, geez, I need a new car. And he told me about his ability to go to the auction and buy something. So I said, this is what I want to spend, this is what I would like to buy. He looked online for the upcoming auctions. There wasn't one this week. He called me and said, nothing this week. Another auction came up. He said, I think we found the car for you. It's in your price range. Are you interested? That's all I did. I said, yes. He checked it out. I bought it. I'm still using it. And that happened exactly the same way for the other 2 vehicles I have subsequently bought. So I didn't know unless I asked him that he was even selling these cars, because he was doing this in Quincy before he even moved to the Milton facility. So there was nothing that was obvious about it.
Did he give you a good deal?
Well, I'm still trying to figure that out. How do I know?
Ned, let me ask you this question that popped into my mind. The way this is, thank you very, very much, Bruce, for appearing. Just in terms of the technicalities of what is happening, does Mr. Boumajad when he has a license, he goes to the auction, he finds an appropriate vehicle here, let's say for Bruce. Does he buy the vehicle at the auction right then and there, and then bring it to the facility to have Bruce look at it and see if he likes it? Or does he not take title to the vehicle, but just bring the vehicle to the dealership, or strike it to the repair facility, show it to the proposed customer, the customer says he likes it, and then Mr. Boumajet goes and buys the car from the auction and transfers title? Or does the auction transfer title directly to the customer?
So the way it works, the auction, when you get the license, you sign up with them, they give you a login name, password. So Bruce is looking for 05 Toyota Camry. I go up there, look at the list, there's 5 05 Camrys. I call Bruce up, I say, hey, come over here. I can see the pictures online. I show him, there's a blue one, red one, yellow one, green one. He picks, says, hey, I like the red, but we can go for the green. It depends on the condition and on the price. And after that, I go up to the auction, physically, inspect the car, check the car. Seems like a good car, everything is good. After that, it's a bid matter. His max price is this much, we bid for it, if we get it, we got it. We bring it back to the shop and just give it another thorough inspection, check the brakes, everything else, and make sure it's gonna pass the inspection. And at that point, the title would get assigned from the auction to the dealership, to the dealer, which would be me, and then I would reassign it to Bruce. And
Okay,
that's
so
how it goes.
you'd actually be selling the vehicle to Bruce?
Yes.
That you have purchased from the auction?
Yes.
Okay, so when you, if he gives you two cars, the red and the green car, and so you win the bid on the red car, because you think it's the preferable vehicle, okay, that suits his specifications. You take the red car to Bruce at this address, 940 Canton Ave. He looks at it and he says, this car is lipstick red. I thought it was cranberry or a darker red. I hate it. I don't want it, okay? What do you do then? Do you,
At that point,
do you return the car to the auction? Or do
You can rerun it at the auction, you can resell it at the auction.
But you would be
or-
reselling it.
What's that?
You would be reselling it.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, through the business, so.
Yeah, but physically, would you then take the car back to the auction?
Yeah, you ship it to the auction, you tow it there, you drive it there, whichever way you want to get it there. And then it was same procedure as I bought it, there's a seller and there's a buyer, so now I'm the seller and there's a buyer.
Okay, but at no time, other than the time that Bruce would be inspecting the vehicle to decide whether he would buy it, then it's at your business location. But if he elects not to purchase it, then you remove the car from this location and return it to the auction within a reasonable time. You're not going to store it at this facility to see if you could sell it to somebody else who comes in for a repair or something like that. Is that true?
No, but, if I had to, I don't usually deal with this, I've never had to deal with it. If I get a car for a customer, I make sure that he's driven a similar car, he's seen a similar car, sat in a similar car, before I even get it, because it does cost money.
So you're not
When you
gonna
buy it, there's a buyer fee,
front the money for a car that nobody's gonna buy.
so
But he's purchased it,
Yeah,
hasn't
we
he?
already know somebody's gonna get it.
Well, we've all heard that before.
So I guess, the fundamental question is, if he rejects the car.
What are you going to do with the
What are you gonna
car?
do with it? You can't turn
we
around.
send it to the auction, or if somebody else is interested in it,
Right, but you're not going to maintain it in inventory at 940 Canton Ave to see if you can sell it within the next 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 days. Is that true?
Not necessarily, no.
No, it's not. So you are going to maintain it there?
Well,
Yeah.
Can I clarify something?
Sure, please.
So behind the building, there are 6 spaces that are fenced in. So he usually has that, say a car comes in for an engine or he doesn't have the parts for it, there's 9 places you can put cars inside the building. Yep. There's 6 behind the building that are fenced in that no one can see, including me, and I live right behind it. He has 6 storage spaces that he can put a car for a part that he doesn't have. So the cars waiting for parts are never out front.
Right, but this is a car that doesn't need parts. It's a car that's now available for sale.
Right, so if he does have space to put cars unseen to the public,
That's what I'm,
say, got into an instance where they didn't like lipstick red and they wanted candy apple red, and if he did get stuck with the car, he does have a place to store it till he can take it back to the auction.
Well, he has a place, but would he be required to store it there? I mean,
No, he's not required, but what he has is, he has a place unseen by the public, that's where you're going.
Right, my question is whether he's going to be returning the car to the auction within a reasonably prompt period of time, or is he going to store the car on site with the hope of selling it? And then you're really running a used car operation from the site, and that's not what Mr. Corcoran has indicated.
Right, that's not what he's looking for, correct, right. So right now, there is a very limited supply of cars to get we've been actually trying to get them from Fuller Village and 600 Canton Avenue as the drivers come off the road. So it's very difficult to find good used cars.
I don't want to get involved in free speech issues here, Mr. Corcoran, but is it fair that the applicant is not going to be advertising in the newspaper cars for sale, or have an internet website?
Right, no advertising.
It's interactive or anything like that?
Yes.
No.
And that's something voluntary that
Correct.
he'll agree to?
It's a condition, a voluntary condition. No signage, no prices, no advertising,
No display.
availability, no display for purposes of advertising.
Okay, so it's strictly a kind of a confidential type service that he's offering to customers.
Yes.
But if I needed a car, of course, I'd be disqualified, or they'd probably charge me too much.
Yeah.
But if I did need a car, I could, and I'm not a regular customer of your shop, I still could go in and say, hey, could you find a 2018 Toyota that I'm looking for? And if so, you could see if that's at the auction. Okay?
Yeah,
Would your supply of vehicles, I don't want to get overly technical here, but would your supply of vehicles be vehicles that are at the auction itself, as opposed to yours going on the web and finding a Toyota, a 2018 Toyota that's for sale by some New York dealership, and buying that from that dealership and having it brought in here? In other words, you're going to be working through the auction as a kind of a clearinghouse.
I am, yes.
What if I
But
said
if
to you, I
you
want a
needed,
911?
if
I
you
want a
needed
911
specific-
Porsche,
Yeah, exactly.
and all of a sudden you say,
If
gee,
you have a 911 Porsche that's not out in the auction, and there's this dealer that's selling
He's
it
in
in
California.
New York or California, and you really wanted that car, I can make the phone call, say, hey, can you wholesale this for this much? And then you can do it through that. But also, at that point, it's going too much out of the way to do that. So at that point, you probably ask the customer, hey, this is the car, this dealer has it. Bring it to me, I'll inspect it, we'll go from there. But it is doable. I've done it before where I had a customer that needed a specific car, and somebody that I know that has a dealership had it. So I had it brought to me, showed it to the customer. That dealer wholesaled it to me for a little profit, and I sold it to the customer. So, yes,
okay, so you're saying this is almost like a concierge service,
Yeah.
as opposed to
pretty much, exactly.
a regular used car
Exactly.
salesman or used car operation.
Yep.
That fair?
I think that's right, and if I had purchased one
Yeah.
similarly, and a friend of mine was saying, well, how did you get that? So, well, you go talk to this guy, he's got the ability to work with you to find a car that works, and
Okay. Is there anybody else who wants to be heard in this application? There is none. Mr. Corcoran, do you want to sum up, or have you finished?
I think I'm finished.
Okay, thanks. Anyone have any questions that you want to ask that haven't been asked? Okay, so what we're going to do here is, do you have a suggestion or something? No, you look like you were going to say something.
No, I'm
Okay.
just, I'm rapt with attention.
Okay, then that's great.
Chairman of the board.
Okay, that's great. You usually have very perceptive questions, and I wanted to be sure that all the evidence is completed. So what we're going to do here is, before it's the bewitching hour, is end this hearing and discuss the application in open session. And one of the things I should say before we get into the discussion, and it popped into my head, so maybe we'll open the session just for this, that somehow in Mr. Keneally's letter, for which we really thank him, he says that the proposed variance is to repair and sell used cars via the internet only, and that's incorrect.
That
Do
is
you agree?
incorrect. It was a miscommunication. I didn't talk to him personally, but by the time that everybody, got together and the point got made, he got the,
I explained it to him, yeah.
Okay, so he understands the nature of the business as you've explained it here.
Yes, and
Okay.
he is still against it.
Yeah.
He has-
Okay.
He's not changed his mind. I made the phone call, but I give him his rights as a neighbor.
Okay, all right, that's fine. So we're going to end the evidence at the hearing, and we'll discuss this in open session, and I know my colleague, and, yes, sir.
We're all willing to speak on Rob's behalf, but are you saying that's unnecessary? Our presence here indicates
I think it is. I think Mr. Corcoran has
Okay,
told
no,
us what
that's
you're
fine. I
going to
just
say.
want
No,
to make
that's-
sure that you realize that we would all speak.
Oh, I
in his
understand.
behalf if you so desire, but if you're willing to accept just our presence, then that's fine.
I don't desire it. Do you desire a...
Not when I have a 7 o'clock morning
No.
meeting.
No,
We appreciate the offer.
Thanks for the offer, but...
We really do.
No, we understand what the position is. So as I was saying, I have the greatest respect for Kathleen's legal prowess, particularly in dealing with variances in the nature of special permits. So do you want to give us your thoughts on this application?
Well, I'm inclined to grant it. With the conditions that, there's no signs, there's no, for sale, buy fast, all that kind of stuff on cars that are parked. I think there's more than enough space on the parcel.
There won't be no signs around the car, there won't be no flag hanging.
Yeah.
There won't be none of that.
So I don't really, I think if we put in conditions like that, that addresses Mr. Keneally's concern.
And which give us, through the special permit process, the ability to control this special permit.
Right.
If events occur, or if there are complaints, or
Right.
whatever, which also includes the right to revoke any such
Right, and they're
special
usually
permit.
for a time period as well.
Yes.
So, I think, 3 years or something like that.
Okay. Therese, do you want to be heard?
Yeah, I was just going to say, as long as it's narrowly tailored to, be constructed. I'm just still trying to figure out if we can make a lease provision too, to also kind of deal with some of these requirements. But it sounds like you have to get this renewed by license once a year.
yeah, you
So-
gotta renew it.
So it
every
is,
year.
it's reviewable.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, but you don't have to
That would
come
be my
here.
concern. So as long as it's reviewable by,
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we can address the terms
No.
of his lease, that's a
No.
private contract, but, we say it's a 3-year permit, and that these conditions are that, no signs, no cars that sit there
Mhm.
for sale, that sort of thing. What do you think?
Well, my thoughts are that I never thought I'd be in this position. I thought this application was really a stretch. I'm not sure that a lot of the materials that were submitted really discussed in the detail that you'd made in your presentation, the restrictions that the applicant is willing to cede to get this type of relief.
We could suggest that the applicant's attorney prepared a draft.
I was going
Well,
to
we-
say,
we-
a more narrowly tailored
we
request
could
would be very
certainly-
helpful
we
with
could
the
certainly do
outline
that.
of the parameters that you set forth.
With these restrictions, which go beyond, in my opinion, what legally we can require, such as not doing internet sales and not doing advertising and all of that stuff, you run into free speech issues there. But with those additional protections, and I appreciate Mr. and Mrs. Keneally's concerns being right next door, but I don't think that the conditions that they perceive are going to happen here, because it's a very limited use of the property for the sale of vehicles. And while we hope you're very successful at it, we don't expect a line of customers out in front of your repair shop seeking vehicles. And yet it's, from a businessman's standpoint, it's a wonderful amenity for you to have.
Yeah, it does help a lot, you know, it's just, I get a lot of customers that say, hey, I need a car. Do you know somebody?
Yeah.
And you're
It's
not,
like, do I send them to this guy? What if this guy sells them a bad car, then it's on me, and then, you know, and so I like that too. Because
Well,
one, I can get him a good car. Two, I mean, you're not gonna screw your customer.
And at a good
He's
price.
gonna be coming
Yeah.
down. At a good price.
which is
exactly.
probably lower than most of the used car dealers that are.
Exactly. Now, it's so much competition with the car dealers. You go to this guy, everybody has a car that looks similar, looks the same, but you don't know the condition of it internally. You know, they wash everything
And then you get to
down,
service
they
the car,
this.
so you win on both,
Exactly.
both sides of the deal.
Exactly. I get them into a good car and I service the car.
So I think properly conditioned, I think with some help from Mr. Corcoran, this really isn't an outrageous use variance that's going to adversely affect anybody. And
I don't think it's a significant increase over what activity is already happening there.
And I think that Keneally's main, I mean, I read their main
Yeah.
concern to be the traffic issue and I know that intersection very well, I get all my gas there. But, and it is very busy
Yeah.
right there, but I don't think that it contemplates any increased volume whatsoever. And I read that Keneally's opposition to largely be dealing with that issue.
Yeah.
it dealt almost with a commercial used car operation
You
on the
compared
site,
it to
and
the
that's
one in Weymouth, which
not the case.
is not what this is contemplating at all.
No, and that's actually, as I said, full disclosure, that's probably one I go to. Murphy Brothers, they sell cars at their lot right on the corner.
Right. But, I mean, in fairness, the application, it's asking for something much broader than
Right.
what's been presented here.
Right.
And if it's more narrowly tailored, which Mr. Corcoran can do for us, then I think all of this can be satisfied.
So I guess we'll say that all those in favor of voting this application for a variance in the nature of a special permit with the multitude of conditions that we've discussed here, all those in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
So, Mr. Corcoran, I guess congratulations. I guess congratulations to you.
Prepare.
And you prepare something, time is fleeting, I guess is the way to put it,
I
Mr.
understand,
Corcoran.
I will prepare something, I'll have a look, and I'll make appropriate reference to case law.
Yeah, and there may be some time for the board to make sure all of the conditions are in there, and we want to be sure that we get this prepared and filed before you have to wait till the spring.
And so if I'm making sure that I'm complying with certain winter vacation schedules, am I, like, do I have a week, 2 weeks?
Yeah, you've got 10 days.
Okay.
Oh, I mean, you could do 14. There's no real, I can sign this from Jamaica if I have to. That's not the big deal.
I just got back from vacation, so.
Arrangements could be made.
Wait, don't worry. So congratulations on
Thank you
on
very
the
much.
variance, and thank you for
Thank you for
an excellent presentation, Mr. Corcoran, because I think you really defined the issues in a sensitive way.
Thank you.
And we apologize for keeping you here to this late hour.
Thanks for your patience.
I'm gonna drive to Florida.
Oh, my God. Well,
One of your cars?
thank you. So
We
we're,
actually put brakes on it.
okay,
Brother dying up there.
well, be careful on the way back. and- That's terrible. We'll get this hearing's adjourned officially, so thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night, have a nice weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.